properties as though we are not kings. This is Bernie Sanders that you're looking at and listening to him talk right now, explaining his 3 properties on this day of kings. No kings, damn it.
Do I own 3 residences? Yeah, I do. I live here in Burlington, Vermont. We live in a middle-class neighborhood. Nice house. Guess what? I'm a United States Senator, and I own a home in Washington, D.C., as do most senators. You know, you live there year after year. When I first went to, actually, when I was in Congress for 16 years, I rented all the time. But I got elected. Okay, got a 6-year term. You know what? Let's buy a house. So we bought a house. And guess what? Like many thousands of people in the state of Vermont, I have a summer camp. It's a nice one on Lake Champlain. That's it. Do I own
That's it.
3 residences?
That's all I have.
Yeah, I do.
And that's it's like the scene from The Jerk when Steve Martin's leaving his house and he's like, "That's all I need. I don't need this. I need this." And he just keeps taking more stuff as he's leaving his house as he's getting evicted. If you haven't seen The Jerk, go watch it. It's what I refer to as a perfect movie. This is no King's Day. Bernie Sanders talking about how, yes, I have a place in Burlington. And yeah, hey, surprise, surprise, I'm also a senator. And after we said we were going to live there for long enough, like, okay, let's buy a home because every American can just decide to do that. And yes, like thousands of New Hampshire, Vermonters, I have a summer camp on Lake Champlain. I bet you the thousands of Vermonters who have a house on Lake Champlain, it's not a second or third residence for them, Mr. No King's Day Bernie Sanders.
I live here in Burlington, Vermont. We live in a middle-class neighborhood. Nice house.
It's a nice house. I got a nice house.
Guess what? I'm a United States Senator, and I own a home in Washington, D.C., as do most senators. You know, you live...
as do most senators. You know, the most senators who do the insider trading and who seem to get richer and richer the more time they spend in public office off a $175,000 a year salary. Guess what?
Yeah, year after year. When I first went to... Actually, when I was in Congress for 16 years, I rented all the time. But I got elected. Okay, got a 6-year term. You know what? Let's buy a house.
So hold on one second. You rented for 16 years, and then you got elected for a 6-year term. And you say, okay, let's just buy a house. Bam. Saved up a lot of money in that 16 years, Bernie. I'm not even faulting him for this. Yeah, I'll get to that in a sec. Yeah, forget it. Let's get it out of here. I'm not even faulting. I'm not a socialist. You want to own 3 homes and you want to earn it. Godspeed, God bless, more power to you. You want to earn it on the backs of the citizens you were hired to represent. Well, there we have a bit of an issue. You want to get filthy rich and drive a Ferrari. I don't think you should be able to get filthy rich and drive a Ferrari serving the people by electing, offering, deciding to be a public servant. These guys have forgotten. They think that they're public masters, not public servants. And as these jackass champagne socialist hypocrites who fly across the country for their No Oligarchs tour and plan their No King's Day, this is an older clip from Lex Friedman's show, Bernie Champagne Socialist, I'm asking you once again to donate to my campaign, Sanders, is rationalizing his 3 properties. Yeah, that's right. I work in Washington, so I buy a house there. And guess what? I like to go fishing, so I buy a house there. Yeah, and that's it. That's it. That's all I got. Holy sweet merciful hell. Well, it was the weekend of No King's Day, people. The most organic grassroots movement since sucralose. I hate sucralose. I can't stomach sucralose. No pun intended. Do you remember Gavin Newsom calling Trump a tyrant for trying to bring in the National Guard or bringing in the National Guard? And then you have Karen Pain in the Bass. What are her nicknames? Karen Pain in the Bass, Karen Stupid Bass, Karen Bastard. What's the other one? We had another name for her. Whatever. They were calling Trump a tyrant, a fascist for bringing in the National Guard. Oh my goodness. Where the heck? Hold on one second. Where the heck is the video of the horse? I have the video of the horse there, and I had to it took me some time to find out what was going on in the video. Yeah, here we go. It's Elijah Schaefer posted this. I had to pick the brain of my good friend and also very smart man, Mark Grobert, Lord Buckley. I'm going to be on his channel on Wednesday. I was like, this looks like the LAPD. I'm not mistaken in thinking this is the LAPD. This is under the jurisdiction of Karen Pain in the Bass. Look at this. Holy crab apples, people. They came in with the cavalry and not the cavalry, like some idiots seem to confuse the two. The cavalry. And look what they're doing. Ooh. Oh, the dramatic fall. By the way, may I pause and just point out the obvious here? Here you go. You got Mexican flags and keffiyehs. Nothing says predatory incursion like Mexican flags and kefiyas. Nothing says grassroots organization pro-American protest like foreign flags and foreign face guards. Now, I don't agree necessarily with whacking that guy on the hands for touching a horse. I don't agree with bringing horses to protests. I think you're not for in terms of like, properly dealing with the violence of protests, in terms of like exposing the horse to injury. Call me bleeding heart PETA. But when they brought the horses into the Ottawa protests, it wasn't a question of like violence from the crowd. It was a question of you don't bring horses into crowded areas in the middle of winter with slippy streets because accidents happen. We subsequently found out that that's exactly what they wanted to happen, the RCMP. Oh, wouldn't it be funny if we had to euthanize a horse and we could blame it on the protesters? The only difference between what happened in Ottawa and what we're looking at there is that in Ottawa, the protesters weren't violent. They weren't striking the horse, approaching the horse, touching the horse. They weren't breaking shit. I don't know why you bring a horse to a protest on your feet. It makes it a lot easier, I would imagine, to avoid the unforeseen potential panic of a horse kicking someone. But set that aside. That's the LAPD. That's Karen Bass, the commie Marxist pig that she is, after shitting on Trump for the last however many days now, tyrant, fascist, authoritarian, bringing in the National Guard, bringing out the cavalry and LAPD officers who are doing their best to pacify a violent mob. That was not that bad, by the way. I'm not faulting the cops there. Don't touch the horse, strike on the hand, and then the guy had a little bit of a dramatic fall after he was shoved. But you heard the cops saying, "What are you doing? Just get back. What are you possibly doing?" "Oh, no, we're here. We're going to agitate your horse. We're going to break windows, loot, set cars on fire. And when you try to subdue this violent protest, we're going to claim victims." It's what you do, by the way. It's the Marxist tactic. You get yourself injured, and then you say, "Look what they did to me. Woe is me." That's what's going on in the world today, people. But actually, no, hold on. There's a little bit more because I want to show you this. This is just the funniest thing ever. Have I not shared these tweets with you? I think I did. If you follow on Twitter or you're a member of our Viva Barnes Law, .locals.com community, you've probably seen all of these already. Nick Sortor, who's been on the channel, and we love him. I don't know how he catches up with and confronts Jamie Raskin, but he manages to catch up with Jamie Raskin. I call Jamie Raskin because he's a piece of rat wrapped in human skin. Listen to this. I'm not playing the whole thing because it's long, but I'm going to give everybody the link. It's glorious. Raskin is an unhinged lunatic. And I know people are going to look at me and say, Viva's an unhinged lunatic. The ball doesn't lie, people. I might be eclectic. I might have idiosyncrasies. I might have a number of my own issues. But I'm not an unhinged lunatic like Jamie Raskin. Listen to this maniac.
Get out of my face, you little fascist. Get out of my face.
Hey, Congressman, question for you. So you originally...
Who are you?
Hi,
Who
my
are
name
you?
is Nick.
Who are you?
Nice to meet you. I'm from X. So I have to ask you, you said Kilmar Abrego Garcia. You voiced a lot of support for him originally. Now he's been charged with facilitating the transport of illegals. Are you still going to double down?
Go back to your job. What kind of asshole, arrogant, pompous, elitist, no King's Day asshole who thinks he's a freaking king to dictate to the people he serves to go back to your job? Holy shit, look at this unhinged lunatic's face.
On that? So he gets due process now? Do you believe in due process?
He gets the due process that an illegal alien is afforded. And lo and behold, it's not the due process that a citizen, naturalized citizen, or bona fide visa holder gets. That's the end. They never got there.
I don't think he... Wait, was he supposed to be here to begin with? Was he illegal? Was he illegally? How did Kilmar...
Yeah, let's go to the end.
Well, I don't know. Is Elon Musk...
So you're saying that everybody else...
Do you think Elon Musk should have been deported?
So all
he wasn't illegal alien.
No, he wasn't.
Wait, yes, he was.
So all these other
Tell me why he
illegals in
wasn't.
Maryland... All these other...
He wasn't because there was potentially a gray zone on his papers that he came in on. But he came in on papers, Jamie Raskin. But it's just diversion. First of all, had Elon Musk been deported when he might have potentially been in violation of whatever visa he had at the time, nobody would have been able to complain. You want to go back now and retroactively do something, time travel, and do what you can't do now? No. But he was here on legal papers to begin with, and whether or not there was a gray zone, as he suggested at one point during a speech, he was here on valid visa papers to begin with. Kilmar Abrego Garcia never was. And the withholding order that he had didn't grant any legal status other than potentially not being able to be brought back to the country where he might have faced repercussions from violent rival gang members because of his affiliation to a gang.
You don't agree with Steve
Are you okay? Okay, let's
You don't agree with Steve
Let's do an
Bannon now.
easy one.
You want to?
Do you support deporting criminal illegals at least?
What are you talking
Are
about?
you going to stick the police after me because I'm asking you a question?
What are you
You gotta be
talking
kidding
about?
me. Don't try that.
There's something really wrong with you, man. You're sick in that.
No, just ask.
I don't want to play the whole thing because I want everyone to go look at that. Go look at that tweet. Go watch it. And thus is our intro to tonight's episode of Viva and Barnes Father's Day Law Extravaganza. We might have to end at 8:30, so like a little bit. It'll be a 2.5 hour marathon, not a 3 hour marathon. Wait, Barnes, I haven't done the ad read of the day yet. Before we get there, I gotta bring in. Well, okay, you're in now, Robert. You're gonna thank the wellness company with me. Our sponsor of tonight's show, people, is the I don't know. Can you hear this?
No.
Okay, So you'll read the caption. I'm going to turn the volume down because I can hear it on my end and it's quite loud, but it doesn't seem to play through. Read the captions. We're talking about parasites, people. Could your health issues be caused by an invisible enemy? Fatigue, bloating, brain fog. What if parasites are the real culprit? Was looking into this. I mean, I'm a bit of a hypochondriac, so probably not the best thing for me to look into. But parasite cleanses. We saw this video here. It's an amazing thing. They are apparently everywhere in our food, in our water, in our pets, especially if you have cats, people. Toxoplasmosis, it's a real thing. They secretly invade your body, wreaking havoc on your gut, energy levels, and even your brain. There's a reason why they call them crazy cat ladies. They secretly invade your body, wreaking havoc on your gut, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So Maha is officially here. The wellness company is making these hard-to-get medications that will allow you to get these gut cleanses, parasite cleanses. The wellness company is doing amazing work. They've been doing amazing work for a very long time. Peter McCullough out in the front lines fighting for this. You can go get your doses and your product. You go online, you get a digital intake form. You fill it out online. They deliver it to your door. Go to twc.health/Viva. The code Viva will get you $60 off plus free shipping. And don't wait to cleanse your body today. Take back control. Get healthy from the fine folks at the Wellness Company. The link is in the description. Thank you very much to the Wellness Company for sponsoring this video, this stream, this channel, and thank you for putting out great products on the market. Robert, the world is going flipping crazy. We have our schedule. We have the things we're going to talk about, and then other things come up in the interim, and they're absolutely wild. How are you doing, Robert?
Good. We got a lot of topics to cover tonight with the heart out at 8:30. So the Viva's Father's Day dinner. So that'll be nice. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. We got Israel-Iran war as the most voted on topic. No topic was the favorite, but the next favorite thereafter was Israel-Iran war. We've got the Trump reversing on immigration as it relates to Big Ag, thanks to Secretary Rollins. We've got the Karen Reed verdict incoming this week after closing arguments wrapped up that trial. We got Kash Patel filing a libel lawsuit. We got the Trump's ability to control the National Guard being put in doubt by a judge in California. We've got a lot of SCOTUS, both the decisions issued this week and decisions that are supposed to be coming this week, including most of the big ones: habeas, IRS, wrong house raids, appeal processes, standing to sue, schools, the administrative state, the right for perverts to give your kids books or send it to you on the internet. We got bureaucracy versus democracy. We got Medicare rights. We've got the due process. We've got the right to sue the PLO. We've got redistricting. All of these cases either decided or to be decided in the week or two ahead. We've got the historic case I forgot to cover last week, which is United States versus Amistad, the Amistad case. And we even got a bonus case, probably off the top, a fun little case I just came across about the man who wrote the SCOTUS blog being indicted for tax evasion, money laundering, and a bunch of crimes.
Well, I see indicting people on tax evasion is the lowest hanging fruit if they can't get anything else, because I think you go through it. The tax code is designed so that people can criminalize being a normal citizen. But no, Robert, so let's start with we'll start with Israel and the war that is now being waged with Iran. I was watching your Bourbon with Barneses throughout the week, and I said I would not steal, man. I'm going to present both sides of the argument because I know where you're inclined to go with this, and I know what you've been saying on the Bourbon with Barnes is, which is why everyone should be watching them. The war has broken out. Israel struck Iran in what they're describing as, you know, the result of years of intelligence embedding assets within the Iranian military, the Iranian government. They managed to bring in munitions, I guess, to use after the initial attacks. This has been brewing for a long time. There are a number of people who are pissed off in that they're blaming it on Trump, or at least claiming that Trump is orchestrating this or taking credit for it, despite Trump coming in and saying, you know, the no new war president. Flip side, you've got the UN report from a few weeks ago concluding that Iran is continuing to enrich uranium, and they are a mere weeks away from being able to put together 9 or whatever bombs. Iran themselves saying we're going to continue doing this, notwithstanding anything, and death to Israel, death to America. And I mean, what do we make of this now? Israel has struck. Iran has retaliated. Israel has retaliated to Iran's retaliation from Israel's strike. No, I'm not noticing very many people in the international community crying for or on behalf of Iran, which leads me to maybe conclude that, you know, even though nobody really wants to do it, and even though everybody still wants to hate Israel for doing it, the international community is just as happy with the Iranian regime being decimated. What do you say to that?
I don't think that's the case. And I think that the background, the way this was pitched, here's what I think happened in terms of the White House. Some of this is speculation, but it's informed speculation based on a range of evidence that's out there. Is that so President Trump came in, committed to not starting a new war, in particular with Iran, despite Netanyahu wanting to have regime change in Iran ever since the Shah was displaced by the Ayatollah in 1979. You can find Israel predicting that the Iran's just about to have nuclear weapons all the way back to 1980. That's how long they have been claiming they're just about to have them, everybody. Netanyahu in particular has a particularly notorious history of lying to get us into war and conflict or to excuse or apologize Israel's military ambitions in the region. Apparently what it appears to me took place is that Israel, using Mark Levin and others, convinced President Trump that allowing an Israeli so-called preemptive attack would motivate Iran to rush to the table and sign whatever deal was on the table. It appears that Trump believed that attack was going to happen later this week, not last week. The reasons why we can infer that is because it usually takes, as Michael Maloof and others have commented on, 72 hours or so to actually get out all your personnel from being in harm's way within missile range of Iran. And the Israel ended up attacking 24 hours after that evacuation notice went into place. So that would strongly suggest that Trump did not think Israel was going to attack this past week. And most likely the pitch was similar to the Russia-Ukraine pitch, that what will happen is like the attacks. I had this discussion with Mark Robert at America's Untold Stories, and Mark's version is similar to what the Israeli pitch in general is, which is, hey, we took out the nukes in Syria, we took out the nukes in Iraq in the past. This was without major blowback, without broader regional war, without oil prices spiking. So we'll be able to do the same thing here. We'll just come in. It will be a surgical strike. We'll take out their nuclear capacity. We'll take out some of their leaders. And everything will be, Iran will have, a useless counterattack to us, and they'll rush to you, Mr. President, to sign a deal. But that Trump thought he could leverage that before an actual attack, so that he puts out, hey, everybody, because today there were supposed to be talks between the U.S. and Iran on a nuclear de-escalation plan that would be guaranteed by Russia. Both Witkoff, the President Trump's negotiator, and the Iranian negotiator had previously made very promising statements about its progress. There's been subsequent doubts about where it was at. Trump raised questions about whether it was getting to where he wanted to get over the last week, but that looked like negotiating posture. And and most likely what Trump thought was going to happen is he goes in on Sunday after a big military parade in the U.S. on Saturday, which also happened to correspond with his birthday.
Yeah.
And he would say, look, Israel's about to attack unless you sign this deal right here. And I think that's what he thought was going to happen. Israel, as has now leaked, didn't like Trump announcing the evacuation plans and thought that he had tipped off the Iranians to the attack. And Israel has no interest in these peace talks, no interest in nuclear de-escalation. They want to attack Iran. Netanyahu's been consistent on this for 30 years. Israel's been consistent on it since 1979, since the Ayatollah took over. The Israeli perspective is they chant death to Israel. Hence, anything we do towards Iran is self-defense. That's the position. I would say legally, their position is not well-merited, in my view. But we'll put that aside for the time being. So they wanted to go in, and they weren't going to let Trump get a peace deal on Sunday. So they attacked early, putting all of Americans that had not yet been evacuated at direct risk. The only reason those Americans didn't have bad outcomes to them was because of self-restraint by Iran, not because of self-restraint by Israel, which has shown none in this context. Now, Trump is then put into a difficult predicament. Does he tell the world he has no control or discipline over Israel? Does he tell the world that Israel hoodwinked him? That doesn't look good. Does he tell the world that he was in on it and that it was all a big ruse to sabotage the Iranians? That doesn't look good, right? There was no easy out for Trump at that point, and Trump went back and forth. So first
if I can, no easy out without throwing Israel under the bus, because it's one of two things.
Well, he either throws Israel under the bus,
or he admits
says he's
to being
a
in on
hopeless
it.
liar that you can't ever trust in negotiations. I mean, either he's weak or he's a fraud on the global stage. I mean, this is what Netanyahu put him into. It's similar to what Ukraine did by launching an attack on the eve. And by the way, there was likely Israeli involvement in that Ukrainian attack on Russian nuclear capabilities. Russia has suspected it, and it's now being circulated in Russian press because of how similar it looks to what Israel did in Iran. And by the way, how is it Israel can have pinpoint surgical strikes when it comes to Iran, but they can't when it comes to Gaza? How is it Israel can infiltrate the highest ranking aspects of the Iranian military security establishment, but they had no idea Hamas was going to hit them on October 7th? The critics have said that Netanyahu allowed October 7th to occur because he wanted to leverage it to stay in power, purge Hamas and annex Gaza, take out Hezbollah, take out Assad in Syria, and wage war on Iran. Haven't we got now all five since it happened? I mean, the October 7th critics that said this looks like 9/11 are more and more being vindicated and validated by how Israel has behaved since then. And Israel is completely out of touch with what's happening in global political opinion. We talked about it at the time. You're one of the only people to say the lack of security doesn't make sense objectively.
Well, and if I can stop you there, just to add that qualifier. When they explained what went into this attack in Iran, they said it was years in the making, with intelligence deeply embedded, Iranian spies, Iranian moles. It almost sounds like what went into this predated whatever lack of intelligence occurred on October 7th, which at the very most charitable, it was a catastrophic lack of intelligence and a failure from the same regime. Now, admittedly, people are going to say,
doesn't have those lapses when it comes to taking out Hezbollah or taking out Iran.
The argument is going to be that, well, first of all, if they screwed up before, at least they didn't screw up now. But flip side, the reliance on high tech with Iran, they're right to rely on the high tech element, and with the bulldozers and the power gliders.
But they had people who infiltrated the highest ranking positions. They had drones put in there, and in fact, Iran is still catching them. A lot of the most successful attacks have been done from within Iran by Israeli assets. And yet somehow you can infiltrate Iran, but you couldn't infiltrate Hamas.
It's always, it's not even the infiltration. It's how it occurred. 12 plus hours in some villages where this went on. And it's the same catastrophic intelligence failure.
On October 7th.
On October 7th. It's the same catastrophic intelligence failure of the regime that has now years in the making been planning this. I also, just to take umbrage with one thing, Robert, some people are going to say, Iran showing restraint. If they had anything more to throw at Israel, they would. Like what?
No. I mean towards us. So,
in terms of not striking U.S.
All those U.S. facilities are right there, easy to hit, very easy to hit. And we did not. The timing of Iran's attack did not give us time to get those people out. to get all non-essential personnel out. Usually it's 72 hours, give or take. And so the only reason we didn't have those people subject to attack is because Iran chose not to do so. That's it. I think Netanyahu and the war whores thought Iran wouldn't be able to help itself, and in symbolic significance, attack U.S. bases that are all over the Middle East. For those people that don't know, we got military bases all over the world. So, I mean, more military bases around the world than Rome ever had. So it's nuts. We're not an empire. We just, all by golly, sure look like one. But they didn't have enough time to get out. The only reason we didn't have a tragic loss of life is because Iran chose not to attack any U.S. facility, any U.S. place. And so that's it. Otherwise, we would have been doubly hit. And so then Trump's first reaction is to say, we have nothing to do with it. Has Rubio put out this is a unilateral action by Israel.
Everyone, I covered that particular tweet last year from the last week from the Secretary of State. He says this was unilateral and we were not aware of it. And then people are saying, well, the tone seems to be changing now. Mike Tracy being one of them, saying now Trump is taking credit for it by saying they did this with U.S. weaponry and it's high-tech weaponry. And I said, look, I don't read that as Trump taking credit for it. I do read it as Trump trying not to throw Israel under the bus on an international scale, which some people might take umbrage with regardless. But
it came across as the pitch that started to come out was Trump sabotaged and tricked and deceived the Iranians and had helped the attack be more successful because he never had any intention of diplomatic talks and just wanted Iran to have their guard down so Israel could perpetrate an attack. I don't believe that at all about Trump. That's not in his modus operandi. But secondly, that's disastrous for Trump on the global stage. If the whole world thinks he's a hopeless liar who's going to sucker you into discussions and negotiations just to use it against you, nobody's going to take him. Nobody's going to negotiate with him.
Well, no,
nobody's going to. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's sort of like the Gaddafi precedent. If people think that you're going to lie and then kill them once you take over, then no one's ever going to agree to
give up nuclear weapons again.
Yeah. So,
and indeed, this conflict is going to accelerate the push. I'll get to that in a bit, but for Iran to get nuclear weapons now, because Iran and we have made it clear to them that's their only security. Another stupid aspect of this. So Trump was caught. He tries to do take credit. Like you broke down his interview with Tucker Carlson, where he tried to disclaim why he had an idiot, by his own definition, a moron like John Bolton in position of power. The problem is it's him trying to apologize for it and say, no, really, it was a brilliant 3D chess move because I could use them to negotiate with North Korea and Russia. Problem? Those deals got blown up by Bolton. Trump got nothing done in North Korea because of John Bolton. Trump got nothing done with Russia because of John Bolton. It was a failure by Trump. That's what it was, but he has a difficulty admitting that openly and easily. His virtues are his vices are his virtues. He's stubborn as heck. You welcome that when he's on the right side. You don't welcome that when he's stuck on a bad idea. The other vulnerability with Trump is that Kellogg has exploited, that Netanyahu exploited, that the deep state's going to keep exploiting, is that it's an old saying that the greatest temptation for a great salesman is they will buy themselves an ad. And what it means is that when they're really great salesmen, they tend to be suckers for certain kind of sales pitches. And in this context, if you come to Trump and say, you know what, I have a solution that will just make you a hero and won't have any blowback by anybody anywhere at all. It's going to be a win-win-win-win-win for everybody. He will bite on those, even when it's against what Tulsi Gabbard, as Director of National Intelligence, is telling him. Even when it's against what Secretary Hegseth is telling him. Even when it's against what Vice President Vance is telling him. And here, I think what they told him was they gave him a lot of false intel. They said, Iran's totally isolated. Iran's right about to collapse. Iran's regime, one of all the moderates, can't wait to replace the mullahs in Persia.
Well, if I can ask you about this, because look, I don't trust the UN as far as I can throw them. But the flip side is, I always say, when they tell you something that's contrary to the narrative, that they want to push, then you give a little more credibility. If the UN is saying that Iran or Tehran is very close to a nuclear weapon, however many tons that they have, that would, in theory, be contrary to whatever agenda the UN wants to put forward, and so therefore it must be more credible. What level of stock do you put into Iran? I know that they've been wrong for the last 25 years. But what level do you put
Well,
into
I
that?
take Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's director of national intelligence, at her work. She reviewed all the intelligence and just 2 months ago said Iran is nowhere near developing a nuclear weapon capability. And she went further. She said there's no evidence that Iran is even intending to try to weaponize its nuclear energy program into a weapon, to a nuclear missile. Even Netanyahu had to admit today at Fox and in his prior statement, well, maybe they were a year away, which is what Netanyahu has been saying since 1984. That Iran is 1 year away. So that tells you that there isn't evidence for it. If we had any evidence, they would at least try to fake it like they did during weapons of mass destruction with Iraq. Israel hasn't even tried to do that. That's because there isn't any. And they know there isn't any. And that's the problem. And so in fact, all the IEA did effectively is exclude them permanently. Well, what's going to likely happen is Iran is now likely to withdraw from for their supervision and likely to withdraw from the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty. They're not going to agree to have inspections any further. They're not going to agree to any of it in all likelihood. I mean, there's a chance that Putin can change all that, but it will be up to Putin because Trump has blown his credibility because of what's happened with Netanyahu. But even though I think Trump was trying to stay in between everything, he couldn't, because initially when it looked like it was going to be a big success, Trump decided to take credit for it, like he did with Bolton. Hey, really, there's a secret strategy here when there isn't. The problem with that is that led to a bunch of blowback. And Putin called him, and the nature of that conversation you read between the lines, broken down by Alexander McCorris on his channel and with the Duran, that hopefully we'll have a emergency broadcast version of the Israel-Iran war and with other issues of the global geopolitical risk, World War III risk, with the Duran at noon on Wednesday. Waiting confirmation from the Alexes on that, but that'll be a fun a broadcast to get into prediction of what you hear all the different paths. Here's the different way people think about it. But I think the short answer is that this was an attempt to drag the U.S. into a war with Iran that Trump got snookered into doing by Netanyahu tricking him and rushing the timetable for its events and giving him false intel. And so when he first, remember the pitch is this will be a surgical strike. Iran will collapse. There'll be mass riots, and the liberal regime will take over in Iran, and we'll have more peace for the whole world. Or in lieu thereof, they'll rush to the table to sign the deal that's on the table from the U.S. That's what will happen. Mm-hmm. That Iran does not have any allies in the region. That Iran has no allies globally. That Russia and China will do nothing whatsoever to support them. And that Hezbollah and Hamas have been effectively limited over the last year. That Assad has gone from Syria, so that the net effect will just be a couple of missiles that get struck down by the Iron Dome. And the first 24 hours kind of looked that way. Many Iranian leaders being taken out, including all the people who are negotiating with Trump. I mean, that was their top priority by Israel.
If I may though, whether or not there's going to be a popular uprising and it'll become a more liberal Iran, one thing is clear, or maybe you disagree, that it does show that within the Iranian regime, there are obviously a number of discontent or people within the regime working with the Israelis to overthrow the regime.
I don't think that's what it is. I think they just got good spies in key positions. I don't think they're people that are pro-Israel. I think that they just did a very good job using the relative, I say relative, but Iran has been more relatively open in the last 10 years than in the prior 20 years. You can go to Tehran now and see, a bunch of women without face, all the face stuff going on. So the stuff like that. And basically Israel used that very effectively to get people implanted throughout the regime. And they've been obsessed with Iran more than any other regime in the entire Mideast since 1979, since the Shah's rise, the Shah's decline and the Ayatollah's rise. And so I don't think it evidences or substantiates any actual meaningful dissent within the infrastructure of the hierarchy of Iran. But what happens is first Trump decides he's going to try to brag and hint that, hey, he was all on board with this and so forth. And then the second part, and then begging, thinking Iran is going to rush back to the table. Instead, Iran announces cancellation of all mediation conversations, saying they're no longer going to discuss this with the U.S., period. And those issues escalate. And then all of a sudden we start seeing a different response. One, that effectively it was some initial Israeli claims are now belied by what starts happening 24, 48 hours later. All of a sudden, the air defenses are back in full for Iran. And then all of a sudden, Iran missiles are getting through. The Iron Dome that was supposed to be unimpeachable, especially with the help of various U.S. and British military that's there using our weapons to strike down attacks on Israel, stopped working. And all of a sudden, there's hit after hit after hit. Not only that, we're seeing no people screaming in the streets for the regime to change. Instead, we're seeing people who are critics of the regime come out in defense of the regime and say double down on attacking Israel. Not a surprise by anybody who understands the rally around the flag effect, or anybody who has studied and observed regime change politics for the last 40 years.
I know the conspiracy theories, whether or not I agree with them. People are suggesting that it's a convenient time for the Iron Dome to stop working, and whether or not it's let some destruction rain down on Tel Aviv so they can further justify further retaliation. What is your thinking, that the Iron Dome is not as good as it was sold? Because it's been working for the last...
two things. They underestimated Iran's capability to counter, because in prior smaller skirmish events, there had been nothing significant from Iran. And I think they convinced themselves that, and this is common throughout this has been the most extraordinary tendency of the warmongers for the last 50 years, is to completely understate their opposition. Not like we watched on Saturday night, the documentary Fog of War about Robert McNamara, which he thought would be celebrating and excusing his decisions. It ended up being one of the biggest indictments of him ever that any documentary could have created, because it showed his disconnect. But a lot of the statements he makes shows the mindset that gets you into that kind of trouble. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about going into the Vietnam War. It was kind of like Afghanistan. Vietnam is very unique. And you had a population that had been extraordinarily successful against empires trying to conquer it. So much so, Vietnam is the only population in the world that didn't just beat the Mongols once. They beat them twice. The Mongols, Genghis Khan, they beat them twice. And we decide we're going to go in there after they whip the French? You would think, hold on a second. But they didn't even think about that. They didn't even process that. This is the common denominator. And they're like, oh, Iran will easily fall. Iran will just collapse. Iran's military is weak. Iran won't be able to hit us. Our defenses are impregnable. It's clear that was thought in Israel, because you're seeing Israelis come out and say, hold on a second. This wasn't supposed to happen. We're not supposed to see in Haifa and Tel Aviv and other places bombs exploding in our streets.
M. Sidloy in our Rumble community, who I've known his name for a while, good information, says the Iron Dome is not for stopping ballistic missiles. David's sling is Iron Dome is for slower. The ones we've been seeing, things up in the air floating and then rocketing. I mean, is that a ballistic?
It's all kinds. And then, of course, they underestimated. Iran has hypersonic missiles now, which people didn't know about. And so the short answer is that what was supposed to happen in Iran didn't happen. Number one. Number two, as the New York Times confirmed, these so-called surgical strikes did little damage at all on Iran's nuclear capacity. Iran's nuclear capacity is way underground in terms of where its enriched uranium is. They whacked a couple of scientists. That's not going to really change things that much. And so all they really did is give Iran an excuse to opt out of the nuclear nonproliferation treaty.
I just saw a tweet from Winnie Broderick that said Iran just backed out of the talks. They're not going to have them anymore. What I love, Robert, is that a month ago you were being called Jewish, Zionist, pro-Israel shill, and now I'm reading the chat and you're pissing people off with your interpretation of this event. So it's great. But this topic always invites the most rational discussion within the comment section.
Well, Trump's presidency is at risk in ways that it has not been at any other time in his history. The only other time that's comparable was how he would handle COVID policy in early 2020. And he initially retweeted me and said he would stick with his instincts, not go along with Fauci. Then he folded and capitulated to Fauci. And they fed him a similar, hey, you can have a win-win. Create a vaccine. And this vaccine will heal everybody, and you will be the great savior of the world, and nobody could be unhappy with you. Same kind of pitch. And Trump's just, unfortunately, a sucker for that kind of pitch. It's what he wants to hear. It's like, oh, you mean I could get a deal done with Iran or Ukraine or with COVID? that everybody will love me and no one will be critical?
But Robert, I mean, I'm not reading the chat, but I know that people are saying this. The fact that Iran has ballistic missiles now that are capable of breaching the Iron Dome is exactly why, under no circumstances, can they ever be allowed to have a nuclear capability. And so,
I mean, well, that's the position. I mean, there's only one country in the world that refuses to join the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. There's only one country in the world that stole its nuclear materials overtly from the United States to create its nuclear armament. And that country is Israel. So it's always a little ironic when Israel's saying, let's comply with international treaties that Israel itself refuses to agree to and refuses to comply with. That the argument on that side of the aisle, this was the argument of the Israeli president about 15 years ago, who said, look, when they asked him, should Israel have should anybody have nuclear weapons that doesn't currently have them? And he said there was only one country in the world that's ever used them. I mean, that was the point. So the degree to which, now I agree with the nuclear non-proliferation principle. I agree with not having, I want fewer nuclear weapons around the world, period. That's my position. But whether or not Israel should have them and Iran shouldn't is not as easily decided a legal policy decision as some people have suggested. But I would suggest it's mostly irrelevant because, again, Tulsi Gabbard said they're nowhere close to it, and there's no evidence that they're pursuing it. And that's Trump's chosen director of national intelligence. And she has not rebutted that for a second during this entire thing.
But she did put out a video recently with some nuclear holocaust warning, I think, earlier this week, an ominous...
Yeah, but and what she's warning about is us getting involved in World War III by bringing Russia and China into this conflict, potentially.
I want to bring this one out. Iran has been 5 years from obtaining nukes for 50 years. I appreciate that sentiment. Some people are going to argue that they've been backed up or backed off as a result of Stuxnet in particular recently, and as a result of the intervention
I just take Tulsi Gabbard at her word. I mean, this is Trump's chosen director of national intelligence. She said they have no nuclear weapon and they're nowhere near it. And so people that want to claim otherwise have to say Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's chosen director of national intelligence, is lying to them. Does that really make sense? And so now that might be Mark Levin, the war whore's position. But so I think, and then what Trump watched was politically what would happen. When he said things that felt like celebrating the Iran war,
he took shit on Twitter.
He got blowback all over the place. First on his truth post, that a general truth post will have 4-to-1, 5-to-1 retweets, retruths as they call them, versus responses. Not when he suggested anything about getting involved at any level or taking credit at any level for a conflict with a war with Iran. There, all of a sudden, he was getting negative feedback all over the place on his own truth feed. But that wasn't all. Every single true, honest, MAGA populist voice out there with any influence came out against further involvement in this war right away. Steve Bannon spent hours bashing the idea of getting involved in this war. Alex Jones spent hours bashing the idea of getting further involved in this war. Mike Cernovich, Charlie Kirk, a whole bunch of people were like, no, hold on a second. We should not. Jack Posobiec. These are people that are generally very pro-Israel.
Well, and
they're
also,
like, we should not get further involved here.
So, some people are going to say, well, they're not Jewish, and so therefore they don't have the same concerns and issues. A lot of these are I wouldn't say, what's the word for the Christians who believe that the Messiah is going to come. And so like as supportive of, as protective of Israel, if not more so than many of the Democrat left-leaning American Jewry. And so it's not as
even
they're not
amongst that community. You saw a quick say no. I heard from a range of pro-Israel Jewish but MAGA type folks who are like, we want nothing to do with this. This is about the tactical wisdom of what Netanyahu is doing and how it could impact Trump and how it could badly impact Trump on the global stage, how it could completely unravel his no new wars promise, and maybe most importantly, but it's under discussed, is the energy impact. This is why you're suddenly seeing Europe panic and say, hold on a second, maybe everybody should get back together and start chatting again. When they realized this was not going to be some easy strike, end of the story, everybody go home situation. That became very apparent within 24 hours.
I'm not was skeptical, but when they said it was a smashing success, they've done. Look, when Fox News is writing praise, puff pieces about how successful this operation was, and the smolder from the fire hadn't even stopped. I'm skeptical, but I'm skeptical of everything. The only question is going to be, is this going to set them back enough? And for all the pissing and moaning, it happens every single time there's a war in the Middle East. Israel does its thing, and then the world moves on in 2 to 3 years, and nobody really cares that Iran has had a setback in its nuclear aspirations. how does this escalate into a broader global World War III type conflict? It would have to involve Russia coming in to the backing of Iran or China.
Well, the bigger risk for Trump, aside from the getting involved in a war that could just politically go all kinds of directions and often go in directions that would not be beneficial to him, the biggest imminent risk to Trump is oil prices. The number one thing that put Trump over the top in the 2024 election was cost of living. The number one way he has been able to reduce the growth in the cost of living in his first 6 months is to get energy costs drastically down, especially the international price of oil and gas. The number one impact of this conflict that could be detrimental to Trump is it could send oil prices skyrocketing. That would kill any economic growth plan. That would kill his ability to control cost of living. His political coalition would be dead. He'd be a political dead man walking for years. It'd be over. And that's what this conflict can do by itself alone, is just drastically drive up the price of energy. This is why Europe is suddenly panicking as they realize this. And Iran is expressly saying, if Israel continues to take out their oil infrastructure, if Israel is successful at taking away, they're going to take out everybody else's. They've already made that clear. They're going to shut down the Straits of Hormuz, and they're going to prevent everybody else in the Middle East from being able to export oil. Even if they are unsuccessful in that, just the effect of the war is already driving 50%, 100% increases in projected oil prices tomorrow on Monday. So this alone could completely gut everything Trump is trying to do. Just done, finito, finished. Netanyahu can pat himself on the back, but that would be the end of Trump. I mean, that's the biggest imminent risk. The broader, longer-term risk is that the war extends and expands to more conflicts, to more regions, to more countries. My guess is, because if you look at what happened, first Trump gets blowback from his own base on truth. Then he gets blowback from every major influencer that's on the populist side. Sean Davis at The Federalist, The New American, The American Conservative, Kurt Mills. You know, you can go through a list of people that have any degree of influence on the populist MAGA side concerning foreign policy, and you're going to be hard. Salty Cracker did a nice righteous rant on it. It's like, not our war, not our conflict, not our problem. What the heck are we doing? So this was the universal response. I mean, I did a poll on our locals page. 97% plus do not get further involved in this war. Twitter poll, 90% plus do not get further involved in this war. Anybody who did it, didn't matter who did it. Charlie Kirk, Cernovich, Basobit, didn't matter who did it. It was the same reaction. No, 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 no. We're not going to another dumb war for Netanyahu. And so for those that don't remember, Netanyahu predicted in 2002, when testifying before Congress and rallying America to support a war, he wasn't the legitimate leader of Israel at the time. No doubt about that. Didn't change his political influence in the States. He said, Saddam Hussein is right near a nuclear weapon. Oops, another lie. But that wasn't the only one. He also said, if you go there, freedom and liberty and democracy will flourish across the Middle East. This is how dumb Netanyahu is. I'm yet to hear him apologize for that idiocy, for that stupidity, for that insanity. He wants to go to war. He can do it by himself. That was Steve Bannon's point, and that's the populist MAGA perspective. Hey, if you can win, have at it. But don't come begging to us to bail you out of your own screw-ups. That's on you. That's on Israel, not us. So it's Israel over Hamas, but it's America over Israel. That's the populist MAGA position and will consistently be. It's America first, not Israel first. Mark Levin. So that was Tucker Carlson's point. So you have all this condemnation and criticism. You see this huge public reaction. He starts to realize this isn't working. It rained on his parade for his birthday, U.S. Army birthday combined parade, because there's less interest in seeing a bunch of tanks when there's an actual war going on. So it just ruined all of it, ruined his chance to get peace. He realized very quickly Netanyahu had lied to him. Levin had lied to him because Iran wasn't coming begging to the table. They were walking away from the table. Then Putin calls him, and I think he talks for over an hour, mostly about Iran. My guess is what Putin told him is, here's what's going to happen if this escalates. We will get involved on behalf of, Russia will get involved on behalf of Iran. China will get involved on behalf of Iran. If this continues to escalate, that what they have told you is a lie. On the other hand, Putin remains available as one of the only independent actors anybody in the Mideast consistently trusts to try to mediate a peace deal. After that conversation, you start to see a different tone from Trump. Trump leaks that he refused to allow Israel to assassinate the Ayatollah. I'm assuming that comes from Trump's people. You also see a different tone in his truth post, saying U.S. really had nothing to do with it. Really nothing to do with the attack on Iran. Please come, let's do a peace deal. Let's do a peace deal. Let's do a peace deal. That's you get him talking to other people saying, we're not going to get involved. Now, he's been inconsistent on this because there's earlier interviews where he thinks he invented America first. And he thinks he has such runway, he can betray his 8 years of promises and go to war. No, you can't, Trump. If you do that, you're done. You're finished. Your political coalition collapses. It was built on no more stupid wars, especially in the Middle East, for the crying out loud. That's why J.D. Vance is VP. That's why Gabbard is at ODNI. That's why Hegseth is at the defense secretary. What do all three of them have in common? They've all unlike Mark Levin, they've actually served in this country. They've actually served for our military, and they don't want any more stupid wars like this one in Iran would be. So there's tons of risk for Trump politically, domestically, tons of risk for the world, because you don't want this exploding into something that would make the OPEC embargo look like small change, because of how globally devastating that would be economically. And then secondly, having a bunch of nuclear powers next to each other in conflict is never a good idea.
People are going to say, flip side, this is part of a plan to drill, baby, drill, and then we can make ourselves energy independent and not have to worry about the Middle East and the fluctuation.
It won't solve a year's worth of price hikes. I mean, that's the problem. What happens if the prices go from 15% declines, which is what we've had in energy prices in the first quarter and the second quarter of 2025? What happens if that's 100 to 200% increase over the next 2 quarters? The fact that 2 years from now you might be profiting from this ain't going to help you for the midterms. It ain't going to help you get your butt. You won't be able to do anything. Democrats will take over the House. They'll have a chance of taking over the Senate. And political, he'll be just a dead man walking. He'll just be talking on TV. I mean, that's it. So this could completely destroy his political future. I'll break it down, and we're going to do a special What Are the Odds tomorrow with Richard Barris, People's Pundit Daily, YouTube, Rumble, and Locals, on what would be the political ramifications depending on what happens next. If Trump manages to get out of the conflict without any major blowback, great. Then he's at very little collateral long-term risk and exposure. The Putin has basically offered that exit ramp. In other words, that Trump encouraged Israel to mediate through Putin with Iran. Iran trusts Putin. They don't trust the United States. I mean, why would they at this stage, unfortunately? But so then that would be easy exit. Say, hey, and he seems to be itching in that direction. But there is massive. We're sending major aircraft carriers to the Mideast as we speak. Mm-hmm. By the way, guess where we're removing them from in part? Taiwan. Let's hope China doesn't think, you boys are a little distracted. Why don't we just walk right over and see what happens? Right? I mean, we're encouraging everybody to do stupid things by greenlighting this Netanyahu insanity and by getting further entrenched or entrapped in this conflict. So hopefully President Trump listens to his base, sticks with his own instincts, follows the advice and guidance of Vance, Hegseth, and Gabbard, and gets us the heck out of there. And Putin, fortunately, is offering him an exit ramp to get out of here and ignore the John Poderitzes, the Mark Levins, and all the war horde neocons and the Lindsey Grahams. Lindsey Graham hasn't been this excited since they brought all the Zelensky prostitute lookalikes to his room in Kiev. So, we got to get out of this thing. I do think Trump's instincts remain exceptional, and I think he will find a way out. He will recognize what's happened. He's been lied to again. Can't trust these people any further. Quit trusting them for the love of the good Lord just because they say something that sounds really good, because they're lying to you and entrapping you in further conflicts in ways that embarrass you and endanger America. So the best way is for us to exit this thing as quickly as we can, get Israel and Iran back at the table, get the deal done. There's going to be a civilian nuclear program. Well, what Israel wants is there to be no civilian nuclear program at all in Iran. Iran's not going to do that. That's not going to happen. So, but what you can do is have Russia guarantee. Russia has no interest in Iran having nuclear weapons either. That's one of the great alliances we potentially have here. And that's what Trump can use Russia to negotiate. And I think that's what Putin offered him as the exit ramp, saying, here's the exit ramp. And by the way, everybody who told you otherwise is lying. I mean, Lee Smith. I like Lee Smith. He did great work on Russiagate. Very pro-Israel. He's out there saying that a war would be very popular. He's living in fantasy land, delusional world. These are people that have none of them. What we talked about after October 7th was, aside from the extraordinary, unusual nature of that security lapse by high-ranking officials in the Israeli government, putting that aside, was that doing a mass attack on Gaza would not solve their problem, because their problem is a court of public opinion problem that allows constant funding and political support for Hamas to exist in the first place. And what we said is that they continued to be ruthless in how they went into Gaza. Their political support around the world would go down, 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 and down. Take a look at any survey anywhere in the world, and the opinion of Israel has continued to go down, 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 and down. They are net negative in almost every country in the world now. They seem to be clueless to this, and including in the United States. I encourage people, if you want to know what the young populist perspective is on this conflict, you can just, go to like the hour and 40 minute of Salty Cracker. And it's just his ordinary normie rant about why this has nothing to do with us and we shouldn't be involved. That is the mindset. You have people that have been longtime allies and defenders of Israel that are now becoming very critical because Netanyahu has gone too far. Elon Hulkower wrote a Substack piece. He's one of our local board members, Hulkower, that lays out with good citations a relative Israel sympathetic perspective on this. But he noted that as well, that Netanyahu's history of making inaccurate statements, like he did in 2002 about Iraq, now comes back to haunt everybody. It's getting worse. People don't, the normie, the outside of your hardcore evangelical Christian support of Israel and your Orthodox Jew support of Israel, amongst your normie MAGA voter, who will always pick Israel over Hamas, but will also never pick Israel over America, or put Americans at risk unnecessarily for Israel, that voter is becoming increasingly hostile to Israel's position because they keep dragging us in to these stupid conflicts under Netanyahu, which they attribute to partially the Iraq war as well. So hopefully Trump can get us out. Hopefully this doesn't escalate. Hopefully we don't have to worry about World War III, but we will see. We most definitely live in interesting times, and you can tune in tomorrow to hear the whole political ramifications, the different constituencies that Trump would have to manage depending on how the conflict progressed. With Richard Barris, What Are the Odds? You can find People's Pundit Daily on YouTube and Google and Rumble and elsewhere. And then on Wednesday, hopefully we'll have the Duran to give us their geopolitical strategic take on what paths we might likely see going forward. But to those people that think Trump deliberately did this, that is not within Trump's modus operandi.
No, the idea that he would not overtly lie, on the one hand to the American people, or even to a foreign nation for the purposes of duping them into getting struck and killed. So I didn't put stock in that either. I just thought he was trying not to throw Israel under the bus.
Right. And try to look like he's still in control. Yeah. It's just, especially with this happening back to back with Ukraine, right on the eve of Russian peace talks. All of a sudden, there's a Ukrainian attack on the Russia's planes that are part of their nuclear protection. That looked really bad. And then, especially, it was after a couple of days after Trump had said, hey, look, I'm stopping really terrible things from happening to Russia. It made him look like he was responsible for this. I don't believe he had anything to do with it. I don't believe he really even knew about it. Part of the Fog of War documentary, Robert McNamara is sitting there talking about how he, as Secretary of Defense, and President John Kennedy were unaware that there was a coup attempt against the South Vietnamese government. And he's sitting there talking about how they talked and said, yeah, it was probably our own government who did it. In other words, they didn't authorize it or approve it or even know about it. This is the nature of deep state power, sadly. But we have rogue actors who want to drag President Trump into a needless and risky war that could badly endanger his political support, badly endanger the U.S. economy, and badly endanger American security. Hopefully, President Trump sticks with his instincts, sticks with his promises, sticks with the good advice given by the Steve Bannons of the world, and keeps us out of further involvement in this conflict, takes the Putin exit ramp, tells Israel time to negotiate with Iran. Hey, Bibi, what you told me was going to happen didn't happen. So you got your one chance. You blew it. Now you're going to go down and you're going to settle this thing with Iran, and we're going to be done and out of there. Hopefully that will be the outcome.
And I know this will be much to the dismay of many people in our chat. Thus ends the discussion of Israel and Iran. Let me get to some of the chat.
We got so much SCOTUS. We got Trump National Guard.
Well, we're going to get to the Trump, the about
Trump immigration reversal.
There you
thanks
go.
to that corrupt secretary Brooke Rollins. We'll get to that.
Yeah, let me read as many of the Rumble rants as I can. Question: where's the best place to go and get information about the America First Policy Institute and its members so we can put them on blast on social media?
The America First Policy Institute itself still has a lot of, and you can go to their way, but this is the fake organization set up by corrupt corporate donors to hijack the Trump agenda that has badly infiltrated many aspects of the Trump administration.
Jeffrey says, I turned off Alex Jones for this. Better be good. T90. Karen Bassass, Karen Jackass, Karen the Comedy Basshole, it was Karen Basshole. Viva, just call him Jamie Ratchet because that's what he is and that's what he deserves to be called. Jamie Ratchet is a corrupt pig. Okay, let's go. Cup of Suit says, I settled in 2018. Then they shot and killed the father of two. Now I have to stop the owner of America's third largest home improvement chain before he kills again. Details on my Rumble channel, Cupo Sooth. I have these are neither approvals nor whatever. I'm reading chats, people. Hit the damn to like button or whatever the hell you want to call it. The ratio sucks. These guys are legit. Thank you, real Drew Morgan. Not to compare, the ratio is always higher on CommieTube. Don't know why that is. I think more people are watching it on an app that doesn't have the button. So go hit the thumbs up button. Viva, Trump has a record of avoiding war. He's adamant about it. Who is this clown? It's Barnes, by the way, and he's not wrong. And he makes damn good points. You better listen to him. Denise Antu, Barnes, Ghost of Base Patrick has been talking about how corrupt Netanyahu is and how much he has been gunning for war for months and months now. Pinochet's helicopter tours.
And Elon Okor made the good point that at various times Netanyahu has walked back from when he's been in positions of power. But I think October 7th changed his mind and convinced him he's got the green light. And the success with Hamas, Assad, and Hezbollah, from an Israeli perspective, I think gave them too much confidence to the point they had arrogance about what would likely happen with this. That was my argument with Lee Smith. Like Lee Smith says, no, everybody's isolating Iran. Nobody's supporting them. It's like, I think you're reading the room wrong. Putin is not picking up the phone and calling Trump right away if he was there to tell him Russia will not get further involved at all in this conflict. No, he's telling him the opposite. China's not sending huge ships of equipment and other things, planes that are being tracked by a range of people. What a weird, crazy world we live in. You can watch the bombs and the missiles go off on live TV, which is totally wild. You can track planes and things. Normies are doing this kind of like intel work right there for everybody to watch. But yeah.
Hold on. The more chat, I got distracted by a comment on truth. Where was I here? Okay. This is Bay of Pigs all over again. Israel thinks they can pressure the U.S. to act just like Ukraine did to Russia and Dulles did to JFK, asking for air support last minute. That's from Pinochet's helicopter tours. Karen Todd says, in the entire history of air power, not a single time has a country inflicted a regime change using airplanes. You always need an 18-year-old with a rifle to do something. Pinochet's helicopter tour says Trump must be playing along like he knew, lest he look like he has no control. This was what Barnes was explaining. Itsy Bitsy Spider. Robert, if Trump came out and said he made a mistake and took responsibility for not putting Israel in its place, would it help? What is the way
He'd have all the neocons up against him already who are trying to sabotage it and leverage their big... I mean, Lindsey Graham and that crowd are saying they won't back the big, beautiful bill unless he continues to support their war whore agenda. So he's trying to navigate through that to get his domestic agenda through. They're hijacking that. And then you have big donors. You have Bill Ackman, you have Miriam Adelson, you have, and then you have people who have influence. Rupert Murdoch at Fox, who's a big war whore, always has been. Platforms, Mark Levin, who is that way. So he's navigating through with those people. Though I think they only got him to this stage because they lied to him about what was likely going to occur, including lying to him about what Russia would do, what China would do, what other countries in the Middle East would do, etc.
We got, not to change the subject, from Barbisa Ariane, but how's the cigar? Barnes always...
It's excellent cigar. And this book behind me is a nice photographic book of Chattanooga, my hometown.
King of Biltong in the house is premium Angus and Wagyu Biltong from Biltong. USA, high protein, no additives, authentic, handcrafted meat snack, naturally air dried and delicious. BiltongUSA.com. Use code BARNES for 10% off. Iran does not have hypersonic missiles. Those were ballistic. We read this one before.
But Iran says they do have them. Whether they do have them and have used, there's some people who've looked at what's happened that say one or two of those had to be hypersonic missiles. Mm-hmm. I'm not a military expert, so I don't know. I'm just saying there have been a bunch of assurances about, they only have this many missiles. Okay, that's not what we're seeing evidence of. And what I was told by a range of people that the military experts on this was Israel would have very little problems dealing with Iran's counterattack. That is proven to be completely false. So and remember, we've been hearing from these experts in the NATO space about how Russia's just about to run out of missiles, and they've been just wrong. So I'm just telling you that you can't trust at face value any of the representations these people make, because they claim things that serve and suit their purposes that often are not rooted in good intel.
Okay, we got that. Coffee. The war only brings more war. This is why we should make it the last option. Be more concerned with Mexico and Canada. E-Taylor, until Iran-backed terrorist attack occurs against America, and the Americans will want us to attack Iran. Randy Edwards, with all due respect, Israel rant sounds like the No Kings rants we've heard throughout the Father's Day weekend. Tuxedo Blackfoot, I do hope Iran's Christians can make something of the situation. They're the majority by far in the country. I do, but there needs to be doesn't need to be U.S. boots on the ground.
And
I'm a Jewish guy.
The problem with that is twofold. One, when does if let's say somebody attacked the U.S. while Biden was president, would a bunch of Americans say we support the people attacking us because we want to replace Biden too? That isn't the way people respond. Mm-hmm. They rally around the flag whenever there's a problem. Look at Netanyahu. He's almost been replaced 3 different times in the last 3 years. What has led to his being able to stay in power? Either the October 7th attack or an attack by Israel on Hezbollah, Hamas, or Iran. And why? Because people rally around the flag. People that they don't want don't rally to their invader. That just doesn't happen very often in human history. And so the idea that it would is problem number 1. Problem number 2 is, let's say you were successful. How has that? This is my argument with Mark Robert on America's Untold Stories. How do you, Mark Grobert now has a separate channel. What's up? WASSUP with Lord Buckley. Viva will be on there later
on
this
Wednesday.
Week. It's every Wednesday, I think, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Eric Hunley had a very revelatory, revealing interview with him. You usually can't get Hunley to open up. And he opened up the closed can that can be Eric Hunley. Got a lot of fascinating. Hunley just isn't one of those talk about himself kind of guys, but it was a lot of interesting intel and information. But my argument with him was, when in the world has regime change worked to our benefit in the last 30 years in the Middle East? Because who tends to replace them is more hardcore, more militaristic, more nationalistic by the mere fact of how they came to replace them. Mm-hmm. And that's already happening. The new people that have positions in power that they took out in Iran are more hardcore. They're the ones saying we want no deal. They're the ones saying we'll escalate this wherever we want to escalate this. I mean, because that's the nature of what happens. So it's stupidity, compounding stupidity to think regime change is a successful strategy. And this is what President Trump said we would not be doing just a month ago in his speech in Saudi Arabia.
Last one, and one more in our locals after this. I'm a Jewish guy. I'm beginning to hate Israel, always trying to get us into stupid wars that my gut fellow that get my...
And Israel supporters don't understand this. They are blowing their political capital. They're doing what Bush did after 9/11. After 9/11, there was global support and sympathy with the United States. Within 5 years, we had destroyed almost all of it. Now, Netanyahu is doing the exact same thing in Iran. Because he did what his critics said he was going to do, and what the skeptics of what happened on October 7th, thinking that Israel may have deliberately allowed it to occur, is what the skeptics believed. By the way, you can read Trump's statements back or not long after that time period to Newsweek that weren't covered that much, that also raised questions about the unusual lapse of security that day by Israel. But is that by using this to militarize everything and pursue all his most aggressive militaristic agenda, no matter the cost or consequence in the court of public opinion, has destroyed. Israel is now at a worse position politically in public opinion in the Western world than I think they have ever been. And I'm not seeing any recognition of this from pro-Israeli people here in the U.S. I'm seeing no recognition. They don't understand this. And as they think, well, we'll just use the Justice Department to shut down critics. We'll, deport people for what they say if they're here on a visa, so on and so forth, not realizing it's not that marginal. The hardcore left anti-Israeli hatred is marginal, but Israeli skepticism is growing tremendously because of what they've witnessed over the last several years and because of the lasting effect of Netanyahu's lies to support the Iraq war.
I'm going to read this one from our locals community. I'll have to read the rest of it because it gets cut off. Dear Viva and Robert, I've been a long-time member. Kimmy, I know. I've been diagnosed with cancer, and now I'm undergoing chemo and radiation. I live on Social Security. I hesitatingly had to create a Give, Send, Go as I have significant financial burden. I survive on Social Security alone. Would you be so kind to share my link? Where is this? Prayers and also are appreciated. Thanks. Now, hold on. I'm going to do more than that. I just, as Robert was talking, gave. Let me bring it up and share it with everybody here so that if you can help. I know Kimmy is in our community. She's been there for a long time, and I saw this post earlier this week. This is the Give, Send, Go. I'm going to give everybody the link so that you can go support Kimmy. And Kimmy, fight the fight. Here's the link.
Oh, yeah. She looks like my sister Martha.
I'm wondering, so the headphones, I think, I didn't understand that chemotherapy, like chemo sessions take like hours on end because they administer it like drip by drip. There's the link, everybody. Go if you can. And share the link if you can.
So it's just Give, Send, Go, and what?
Give, Send, Go, Kimmy Hunt. Hold on one second. Let me make sure I got it. Oh, no, Kimmy Guy. Kimmie Guy. GUI. And I've given everyone the link here.
Kimmy Guy. There we go.
Give,
Send, Go, Kimmy Guy.
Robert, the other one where Trump is getting into big trouble for the volte-face is on trying to create or suggesting an exemption or amnesty.
A sanctuary industry.
Amnesty for illegals who operate in the hospitality and agricultural industry.
Yep.
So basically, set aside the absolute insanity that just like everybody said, well, there's no more immigration right now, so claim asylum, then all illegals claim asylum, and then that makes them illegal. All the illegals claiming asylum are now going to say, well, we're here in the agricultural and hospitality industry, so we get amnesty. Set aside the obvious issue that this is a volte-face on the mass deportations that people wanted that got Trump elected. Set aside the fact that it's going to let people say Trump is giving exceptions amnesty for industries in which he has either direct involvement through his hotel industry, although I don't think he employs illegals, or big ag contributors, donors, whatever they're called, lobbyists who are now getting their way with Trump. Everything about it is terrible. A terrible idea, a terrible proposal, terrible to contemplate. A slap in the face of the populist movement and the slap in the face of the people who got Trump elected. Did he take it back? Did he walk it back? What the hell happened?
No, not yet. No, in fact, so those that don't know, I mean, some people thought this was a rumor. It's not a rumor. On Friday, the Trump communicated through the director of through ICE to all ICE employees and all HHS and other relevant agencies employees to stop doing any raids of farms, agricultural institutions, and various various hotels and restaurants. And that the only people that could be raided there are people that are part of a separate criminal investigation, or if they've been identified as a criminal illegal alien who's committed a separate crime beyond illegal immigration. This was a complete, at the same time this week, and getting generally a good trade deal with China, he decided to brag about how he was going to allow 500,000 Chinese students to come into the United States to continue to sabotage and steal and spy on America. And he said, I've never had any problem with this. And it's like, you can clearly see he thought opposing Chinese students' presence in the United States was unpopular. He also clearly thought that it was causing him major political problems that they were doing raids on farms and restaurants and other leisure institutions and establishments, but particularly agriculture related. Now, where did he get such false impressions, false intel? Like Kellogg gave him false intel on Ukraine. Netanyahu and Levin gave him false intel on Iran and on Israel. By the way, when they did a big meeting a couple of weeks ago at Camp David, guess who wasn't there? Tulsi Gabbard. Because key people around, the Susie Wiles of the world made sure that honest information wasn't made available to President Trump. And so who was responsible? Before it even came out and was publicly news, I talked about it on Bourbon. I said, I guarantee you that the likely culprit here is Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins, otherwise known as Big Ag Corporate Whore Brooke Rollins. I was critical of her appointment in the first place, but I had stayed out of being overtly, openly, consistently critical, even as the problems began to escalate. I'm on the front end of some of this because I'm close to many of the small farmers in the small farmer space due to representing Amos Miller, the Amish farmer. One telltale indicator was, would the federal government come in and dismiss the case against Amish farmer Amos Miller? No, they haven't. They still haven't. In fact, Despite, I know people that have talked to her directly about this, she refuses to take any corrective action because she's subservient to big corporate agriculture. Small farmers are having problems at the Farm Credit Bureau. They're having problems with overzealous regulators. They're having a problem with the FDA still banning raw milk when the FDA never had any legal authority to do so. So they've got all these issues that in one way, shape, or form come under her control and jurisdiction. Then, she actually almost created a disaster with the with eggs by imposing a vaccine mandate on a bunch of chickens and killing a bunch of chickens until Robert Kennedy intervened to stop her from doing it. The next thing she's done is she has unleashed a range of regulators to increase their harassment of small farmers and has even bragged about it to people. She comes to Trump and tells Trump he's in big trouble economically, big trouble politically, because they're enforcing these immigration raids on agricultural facilities, on big ag, on those poor, hardworking, meat-planting corporations who need illegals rather than hire Americans to do their job.
And let me just specify, because I did use the word amnesty, and it does have a legal context, so I don't want to be confused.
It's de facto amnesty.
De facto, well, it is granting the non-raid, non-enforcement of immigration law on a swath of an industry, not that he's going to go grant actual legal amnesty. So clarify that just so that nobody has a misapprehension. But Robert, like some people were hypothesizing that the reason, on the one hand, some of these big ag corporations like meatpacking plants operate as fronts for other criminal industries, and others, I guess, less controversially, just say the reason why the big ag and the big corporations use illegals is to maximize profits, and so they're the only ones that benefit from this. It's not the small farmers and small corp that use.
In fact, it gives them a competitive edge against small farmers. Mass regulation helps big ag because the small farmer can't economically scale the way they can to absorb the regulations. The second aspect they can't absorb is the illicit competition through the hiring of illegal immigrants. Small farmers don't do this. There's a whole bunch of them talking. Amos Miller is one of the best and most successful farmers in this country for the last quarter century. You know how many illegals he has ever hired? Zero. Zilch. Zunka. Nada. He has only hired American citizens his entire time. Most of them Amish. And he produces some of the highest quality, best food in the world. And yet he is the most harassed farmer in America by government authorities, including complicity by Brooke Rollins at the Agriculture Department. Why? Because she's here to help Big Ag. Big Ag sees as its adversaries small farmers. So she's increased the regulatory burden on small farmers. She has also, by the way, took away funding programs during COVID that were meant to help small farmers connect to local schools. She got rid of that funding source for small farmers. And now she convinced Trump that he needed to create an imminent, immediate amnesty, de facto amnesty, for any illegal working in the agriculture industry. Why? Because that's where Big Ag has a competitive labor advantage over the Amos Miller and small farmers of the world. If you wonder why is that, like people ask, man, I go to Amos Miller's site and some of this stuff is much more expensive than I get at the local grocery store. Yeah, because it's a lot healthier and it's not made by illegal aliens. That's why. And so what she's doing is helping Big Ag crush small farmers, kill small farmers, because that's who she is. You go back and research Brooke Rollins about a decade ago. Guess who was demanding amnesty for all illegals? Brooke Rollins was. Brooke Rollins is connected to big oil money in Texas. She helped set up that fraudulent, fake organization called America First Policy Institute. Some of the people pretending to be MAGA are unbelievable. Like Mark Levin, I'm really MAGA. Oh, yeah, it's not like you promised 3 different times throughout 2016 you would never vote for President Trump. And we're trying to do a vote boycott, organize a vote boycott of him. Some of us remember that, Marky boy. Mr. Israel first. Let's deport his rear to Israel. That'd be better off for the country. But the America First Policy Institute was funded by big corporate organizations meant to infiltrate the Trump movement, infiltrate the Trump White House, to subvert and sabotage the MAGA agenda back into Bushite corporate agenda. It comes from the Texas Foundation she was a part of that had the same agenda, funded by Rick Perry and George W. Bush allies, historical adversaries of President Trump. So I warned people from the get-go that she was a danger. She tried to become chief of staff. She tried to get a bunch of other positions. Fortunately, those were blocked. But they gave as a compromise agriculture, where she should have never been. If you wonder why Thomas Massey has decided to pick every little fight he can with Trump, it probably has something to do with Trump not keeping his word to Amish voters and other voters, including people in Massey's camp, about who would staff the agriculture department. In Trump's first term, he put that boss hog wannabe, that retarded version of boss hog, Sonny Perdue, in charge of the agriculture department. That nitwit moron completely screwed up the Georgia election challenge. I had to sit there and deal with that schmuck. And all he did was serve big corporate farmers who are not real farmers. They're just big corporations that are trying to industrialize our food supply, which has made it less safe, not more safe. Lower quality, not higher quality.
There is the lobbyist element to this, correct? I mean, these are...
Oh, yeah. I mean, big ag is all there. All big corporate ag is like, hey, make sure you get this done, Brookie girl. And Brookie was happy to do it because nobody's a bigger corporate whore than Brooke Rollins. And this is because he is listening to these kind of people. Trump should have known better. Have any instinct. Trump's success right now doesn't depend on actual mass deportations. He's got close to 1 million people to voluntarily exit the labor market that were here illegally. 1 million people in 6 months. He's stopped all the flood of immigrants across the border. And what's happening? For the first time in 5 years, wages for native-born Americans are going up above inflation. For the first time in 5 years, job growth is actually growing for native-born Americans. And he's going to risk all of it by saying, you know what? It's a wink, wink, nod, nod. If you're a billionaire buddy of mine in the leisure industry or the agriculture industry, you're exempt from raids. You have amnesty. This is a political disaster. Right up there with no new stupid wars has to be enforce immigration law, please, for the love of the good Lord. And Trump had so much success, so much progress on this for 6 months. All of it put at risk by listening to that idiot, that fraud, that corporate whore, Brooke Rollins. And by the way, if you had doubts about whether I was right, the New York Times confirmed it in other publications because Brooke can't help herself. She has to run around bragging about how good she is helping big corporations avoid immigration enforcement law. Now, because I and a few other people decided to expose her publicly about it, all of a sudden she puts out a tweet that makes the most political gibberish you'll ever read in your life. It's like, don't listen to the fake news. You have to go dig in 2/3 through to realize she's confirming the story that she claims to be disputing. It's like, we got to secure our food supply. So in the name of securing our food supply, we have to have mass illegals in this country? No, we don't. Get rid of the illegals. Let small farmers take over our food supply, and we'll be healthier, safer, and more American in the process, and more prosperous in the process. So once again, it's another traitor, saboteur in the middle of the Trump administration. The sooner she's gone, the better for Trump, the better for America.
I also just I know people are probably saying the same thing. Viva, now go check AIPAC. So AIPAC, this is in 2024, according to Common Dreams, spent $100 million on lobbying. So Big Ag outspent AIPAC.
Big Ag is much, much bigger than all of them. And I gave her, Brooke Rollins and her staff, 6 months to clean, 5+ months. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And this was the worst of it. That she is single-handedly responsible for convincing Trump that this was an imminent emergency for the food supply and the economy. She's completely lying. She's a total fraud. What she wants is to help big corporate agriculture crush small agriculture. People should ask her, why haven't you dismissed the case against Amos Miller yet? Why haven't you done that? What have you actually done for small farmers? Not big corporate farmers, small farmers. And call her out. And call for her resignation and call for President Trump to reverse this policy immediately. You can't be carving out these massive loopholes that create effectively a sanctuary industry. You can't complain about sanctuary cities when you're creating an entire industry that has sanctuary.
Well, the accusations that he's going to somehow directly or indirectly benefit from it, if it's only through lobbying or if it's through actual corporate interests.
It looks effing terrible. Look, my lefty friends are having a field day with it. Oh, yeah. Trump's for immigration enforcement, except for his billionaire buddies. Who advised him on this politically? Susie Wiles has been neck deep in all this. She's been a corporate lobbyist her entire professional career. She's a creature of the swamp. She's utterly untrustworthy and unreliable. So it's not a surprise that she's the one filtering out Trump getting independent advice. But somebody else, I know I won't get into detail, certain cabinet members have made this clear to the president. But there are additional people that need to, in the court of public opinion, make it clear to the president, this is not acceptable. You don't walk back on your immigration policy. You don't create a sanctuary industry, period. And get rid of Brooke Rollins and put, if Massey really annoys you, make him Secretary of Agriculture. Then you won't have to worry about his House vote anymore. But by golly, that would be a place where Massey would have great impact and influence, or somebody like it. Somebody like a Joel Salatin, someone like, along those lines. Or as somebody put up, who should we have running the Secretary of Agriculture? Let's just give it over to the Amish, because we know we'll get higher quality, better food, better everything. We'll be safer, better off. Well, it's all domestic labor, etc. Anybody but that corporate whore, Brooke Rollins.
I said, clip that, everybody. That's what you clip. Put that as a short and share it out there and get the word up. I want to say one thing here. Kimmy has gone now from, I think it was 1,200 when we first made the announcement, to,
so
let's
Kimmy
refresh.
Guy, G-U-I. G-U-I, right?
Kimmy, Kimmiegui. And I've donated. So we've known Kimmy for a long time. If we're not being duped. That's the seal of approval.
It's a great, great person, great cause to support. Unlike the poor quartering who got caught trying to help a family and discovered that they're all drug users,
Jeez,
had
Louis,
to get back his money. Kimmy's the real deal, sweetheart, nice person. Show the community values that we all have.
I forgot I had given to that give, send, go, and then I saw his video. Even Viva does it. I was like, oh my goodness, I know no good deed goes unpunished, Jeremy. And I wanted him on last week to talk about it, but he'll come on next week to talk about it.
Oh, we got SCOTUS, we got Trump National Guard.
Wait, before we get to SCOTUS,
Ash Patel filing useful libel lawsuit. We got the Karen Reed verdict incoming, and we got the SCOTUS blogger who turned out to be a secret compulsive gambler.
I want to say this one. Spirit 52 has subscribed to our vivabarneslaw.locals.com community. Welcome to
got a great little hush hush up there that produced with InfoWars many years ago. It was the hush hush before hush hushes about one Robert Mueller, the deep state fix-it man, that you can enjoy. We've got tons of other good content there at vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
Now we're going to show some love to our Viva Barnes Law. If I don't get to the commie tubles, I'm going to try to read them, but I'll do them on my show tomorrow. If I don't get to them, I'll try to get to them. And Dread Roberts says, any chance of Trump reversing increasing ag and hospitality and prosecuting management?
Trump does listen to his base. So you just got to get the message, hammer, 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 hammer. And that's where Trump, look at how much he's moderated his tone on what to do with Iran. That could lead to World War III and the collapse of the economy and the collapse of his presidency that he was at the verge of doing by the ordinary everyday Americans reaching out to him. He is one of the most responsive to ordinary people that exist out there. In fact, you could even tell a defensive tone in some of his. He's like, look, I've actually been fighting for peace all the time, and nobody ever gives me credit for it. And he's right. Yeah. He has fought for peace forever. Don't jeopardize that because some nitwit like Mark Levin wants you to go to war in the Middle East again.
New to this says Amos Miller for Attorney General, Ag Secretary, not Attorney General, sorry. Shofar says Trump will lose the street of Pennsylvania if he doesn't fire Brooke Rollins.
Yeah, and they need to deliver for the Amish, and so far they have not. That's just reality.
Voters want America first. Best I can do is amnesty. Let's go.
Yeah, that's Brooke Rollins. Yeah, that's the meme, and that's basically Brooke Rollins.
Amnesty is a trap for Trump against populism, says Nestler. Buffalo Betsy says, I've been wanting to ask this. What other creators or journalists do you two follow? Something you intentionally watch weekly or as frequently as possible?
The Duran, Alexander McCorus, Alex Christoforou, Richard Barris, People's Pundit Daily, The China Show online. Those are 5 that I watch every week without falter or fail. I'll hop in on Steven Crowder, Steve Bannon, Glenn Greenwald, Jimmy Dore, represent populist left, populist right, Kim Iverson, a bunch of those folks. But the ones that I always make time to watch each week is the China Show on YouTube, and I think also on Rumble, but definitely YouTube. The Duran, available YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, and Locals. Alexander Christoforou has his own channel. He's always walking around. Today he was out in the water. He was out in the water talking. It was fascinating. It was like up to his chest. The Alex McCorus, who excellent analysis of geopolitics, much higher the predictive accuracy than almost anybody in this space. Try to be objective, which is brutally difficult in the modern world. particularly Israeli politics and things like that. They have a separate, so they have their individual channels plus the Duran is its own channel, and then Richard Barris, People's Pundit Daily, best public opinion pollster in the country for the last decade, exceptional at what he does. And if people think I went on a rant, wait until tomorrow and you hear Richard Barris give you his Italian New Jersey. I went to, this is another man. The people who are the most upset about this
are the ones
people who fought for our country, people who've seen others fight for our country and die foolishly and needlessly. Mark Levin wants to do it. Go to the front lines. Join the Israeli army. Go to the front lines, pal. Quit sending Americans to do your dirty work.
Actually, I just want to bring this one up here because it's from Kira1. Says, Barnes, have either of you looked into the incident where people received strange calls from Susie Wiles asking for pardons, favors, etc.? They're looking into someone. It was an AI voice. I think they actually were tracing the IP addresses. I don't know if they've made an arrest, but it was definitely AI, and they've announced that. Robert, before
the whole
we
Minnesota thing is freaky. Something's off with that.
Okay. I say deep dive. I'm just crowdsourcing information or gathering it from the internet. Just whatever you think about this, if you have any insights. It's an assassination. I call it domestic terrorism because whoever it was, right or left or nutbag, lunatic, it's terrorism. The assassination of her name is Hortman, who was the sole Democrat to vote with the Republicans on this temporary budget. What do they call it? A compromise that defunded the illegal aliens in Minnesota. 2 days or 3 days before she gets murdered, she gives a tearful, fearful explanation for why she did what she did. And then lo and behold, she gets killed allegedly by this guy who has ties to not the Dominican Republic of Congo, they call it the Democrat Republic of Congo. The DRC, a man who was appointed to the governor's, business bureau of Minnesota by Governor Walz and by the Democrat governor before him. His wife allegedly interned for Tim Walz in 2010. I put out 2 videos on it, so everybody can go watch the summary that I just put out before we went live and yesterday's deeper dive analysis. Do you have any other info or any insights into what the name of sweet holy hell is going on?
Just what you were pointing out was this feels like the Trump assassination attempt in Butler, both of them. Which Netanyahu, that lunatic, is trying to say, that was Iran, everybody. That was Iran. That wasn't Iran. Might be Ukrainian ties. Might be some deep state ties. That wasn't Iran. Might have had some ties to people named Mike Pompeo, for example, who was going around telling everybody how he was going to be the vice president a week before that assassination attempt took place because he thought Nikki Haley would be at the top of the ticket and going after Iran in the name of defending vindicating President Trump's assassination. That was the plan, and that just went sideways because old El Jefe, Donaldo Del Trumpo, turned his head at the right time.
Teflon Don.
Teflon Don,
metaphorically and
physically. The guy who sat there he gets hit, the shot, he's like, okay, that's probably not good. Goes down, then he gets up and does his fight. That's the best of Trump. But you remember they're just weird anomalies, right? The one assassin down there in Florida was connected to Ukraine and connected to deep state actors.
This guy's in the DRC. You don't get to the DRC without working with a deep state apparatus.
Exactly. And it's like the one in Butler. Remember, the guy had 8 phones, encrypted everything. They can't find anything. Everything's wiped down. And, according to the retarded Tango and Cash we have running the FBI, that's all kosher, and there's nothing else to look for.
I'm still hoping that if that case is closed, then a lot of people are going to lose faith. I think I don't understand it the way other people did. I don't think they said it's closed, but we'll see. Fingers crossed.
But remember how much weird stuff? And then we're seeing all this weird stuff about this guy. First, it looks like almost it was planted. They find a list, and the list is all Republicans and pro-life groups. But then you dig into his history, and he's deeply tied to the governor, Tim Walz, who's busy going through his Twitter feed, his X feed, delete. He's deleting faster than Hillary Clinton. Just boom, 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 boom. All his messages concerning this guy that he's got history to going backward when he was a congressman. And then the guy's got multiple houses, and then the wife gets picked up supposedly with multiple passports and a bunch of cash. Something is wrong with this. Something is AWOL here.
I don't know what the Weather Underground terrorist group looked like. Whether it's right or left ultimately is inconsequential. At some point, the far right and far left meet somewhere on the other side. But it looks like this guy, oh yeah, he was a MAGA supporter who was appointed by Tim Walz to go on this governance board that operates in racial equity and handicapped equity, and his wife intern. Yeah, the real MAGA. He's got 5 kids and a wife, but has a second home with 2 other guys. And then the guy, this portly fellow's reading a text but doesn't want to show it to the journalist. I didn't hear multiple passports. I heard passport, ammo, cash, which is guns, gold, and a getaway. Yeah, no, we're gonna see this.
The official story isn't holding up to me. Have you seen the image comparisons? So there's images of him outside the house, and then there's other people saying the guy's like 100 pounds heavier.
Well, they have 2 contrasting videos. The one was from the ring bell, and the other was from the morning where he's seen going in. He does look up, 50 pounds heavier.
Well, would he lose that weight overnight?
I don't know. Maybe the ring cam stretches or something. There might be some technical issue as to why
they look like different people.
He's wearing a freaking Breaking Bad latex mask.
There's something something is not what it appears to be. And credit to Alex Jones. He's been saying, credit to Patrick Bet-David in this capacity, that they've been saying that they thought there was going to be some sort of staged false flag event on the 14th to blame on Trump as say, see, look at this authoritarian. Look, he's got these tanks in this big parade, and now he's got his assassins out to kill the Democrats. That was clearly the narrative they were trying to build, and it looks to me like something was planted in his car. Right? They're saying, or planted, wherever they found his supposed hit list, and the hit list has people on it that are a bunch of pro-life and other people. Nothing. This guy screams liberal Democrat with deep NGO ties.
There is video of him in a church in Congo. So he looks like evangelical. There's videos of him not proselytizing but preaching in a church in the Congo, which kind of throws a wrench in the.
That's very NGO-ish.
Well, I know. No, and also they accuse him of being a white nationalist who's off, preaching at black churches in the Congo. I know. I'm telling you.
How is it these guys? It's like the John Lennon assassin. It's like they would end up connecting. John Salinger's book and those kind of things. There's just Catcher in the Rye. That there's something off here that doesn't add up. That my suspicions are piqued. But that's all I can say at this point. Maybe at some point we'll have a hush hush on him. When we develop more facts and intel, but something is not what it appears to be.
No, and it's wild. I'm going deep. I just, you realize once the internet starts getting flooded with certain terms, you can't as easily retrieve stuff which might have existed that's going to get buried by the current search words or certain current.
By the way, King of Biltong's question about whether Kash Patel has arrested all the top 10, that's fake news. Many of them were arrested under the Biden administration, and Patel's people have been circulating that. And, I get it. You're trying to, cover yourself. But maybe that's a good transition. A good lawsuit Kash Patel filed against those rogue deep state actors for MSNBC.
Yeah. Where is it? I brought it up here. Kash Patel's going to sue FBI. Kash Patel sues MSNBC columnist Frank Figliuzzi for fabricating a specific lie with outlandish nightclub claim. Let me bring it up. The claim itself is specific, and I was thinking, maybe he's being a little sensitive. No, this is legit. Here, I won't play the whole thing, but check this out right after I bring down the volume a tad. I think this is a Figliuzzi.
The FBI needs to reach out to that community. So, Frank, let's turn to FBI Director Kash Patel, who has sort of taken a surprisingly backseat role, at least to this point, in the first 102 or 3 days, wherever we are right now. What do you make of that? That he's just been a little less visible than I think a lot of people, Trump observers, expected he would be.
Yeah, well, reportedly he's been visible at nightclubs far more than he has been on the 7th floor of the Hoover building.
Pause it. I take that as a statement of fact, and for anyone who's been mildly critical, if it were to turn out as a matter of fact that Kash Patel is clubbing, the one thing I did, I did notice, Dan Bongino's got a family, he's got a wife, and the sacrifice on a personal level that Bongino has had to make to go to that shithole swamp of DC is a lot different than Kash, a young single man with no kids. But if I were to, if it turns out as a matter of fact that he is in fact clubbing or at clubs, that will cause me to question Kash in judgment.
That was just a made-up fabrication by that, because it was sort of like I have my criticism of Kash Patel. Primarily, I think Patel is an institutionalist who thinks the FBI is fundamentally a good institution, that a few political bad actors corrupted, and he takes at face value their stories about Epstein, their files about the attempted assassinations of President Trump. And I disagree with him on that. I think you don't have a few bad apples, you have a poisonous tree. And that leads to different policies, different personnel, and different success rates. But Kash Patel is kind of he's much more of a workaholic, a bit of a nerd in that respect. The idea he's out, hanging out in nightclubs everywhere. These FBI guys are confession through projection. Like Mark Levin did a long confession through projection. Like he was attacking MAGA, and if you replace there with I, you get how much Mark Levin is aware that his ideas are really rogue and don't make sense and are being rejected. It's a useful filter. Just take whatever the person's accusing you of, take it and say, assuming they're doing I, and you can do this in interpersonal conversations, professional interactions, etc. And people are just confessing to you their own crimes. The more absurd it sounds about you, assume they're telling you the truth about themselves. And that's what appears to me the case as to what these because it was ridiculous, the idea that he was hanging out in nightclubs. Kash Patel's never been known as a partier anywhere, any place. There are other people I know who might fit that description. There was that moron who Trump kept bringing back into his campaign at different times, who went to a strip club here in 2016 while he was married, while he knocked up another Trump employee, and this dimwit was going around, I was like, if you're that stupid, you can't be in a position of power. But that's not Kash Patel. That's not Kash at all. So this was obvious libel that this dimwit thought he could get away with. MSNBC has retracted and called it back, but he's going to get sued. He's going to have to write a big fat check. In all likelihood, because Kash Patel here is clearly in the legal right, and credit to Kash for bringing the suit, because there's not enough of these suits brought when people are clearly in the wrong.
No, and also it wasn't a hyperbolic, oh yeah, he's spending more time in the clubs than in the office. It was reports of that he's being seen at nightclubs, but then I don't know, they're going to be sneaky and say, well, he was at a Sankat set or something. And then it's definitely a nightclub.
According to the complaint, he never goes to nightclubs, which my understanding of his reputation, that's absolutely the case.
I would have
not. No one would confuse Kash Patel with a partier. I mean, seriously.
A Kash Patel with Hunter Biden, for example. Anyhow, no.
That's probably why he and Dan Bongino are so concerned about they're like, we got to get to the bottom of this cocaine in the White House. We don't understand how that could possibly happen. That degree of naivete.
I did look it up. It's funny. I saw a short video of someone reacting to a Scott Adams video talking about how the top 10 have been arrested under Kash Patel's FBI. I didn't fact check it. I didn't share it. But no, it seems that they've caught 3, but not the top 10.
Which is good. I mean, I'm glad they're doing the job. And I think 3 or 4 were caught during the Biden administration. Okay. Usually, by the way, several of the top 10 never get caught. I actually track who those are.
They're probably are they? Is it because they're already dead somewhere and like they're never going to catch them?
Nah, maybe that's always possible. But in many cases, it's because of their degree of sophistication. Like when I'm doing my studying for freedom planning, I study high-end criminals because who's better at avoiding the government than a high-end criminal that is on a most wanted list that can't get caught? Which, who else was on the most wanted list and never got caught for like a decade plus? The father of the Vegas shooter. Just a little interesting historical tidbit.
Another one with definite no ties or connections to intelligence.
Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here, according to the good boys of the retarded Tango and Cash running our FBI.
The problem is I want them to deliver because
and so do I. And I thought they would be much better than they've turned out to be. There's always hope. I'm a Baptist, so I believe you can get converted on your deathbed.
Okay, good. That's the FBI director.
Now, speaking of rogue cases, before we get to all the big SCOTUS cases, we got 2 other cases to talk about before we get to SCOTUS. We got a lot of things SCOTUS this week, but we'll do a rapid fire through them so Viva can make his Father's Day dinner. And his wife won't experiment on him and sleep with various neurological things. We got Trump National Guard, and the Karen Reed case finally reaches verdict.
Hold on, Trump National Guard. Why am
His right to use the National Guard.
Oh my goodness, I'm such a total brain fart on that. Well, I mean, we started off the show with that. We may as well make a loop back to it now. Okay, so Trump brings in the National Guard. Who was it I was talking about? It was with Lord Buckley, Mark Robert. And he's like, yeah, he's bringing them in, but it's to protect federal facilities, federal buildings. It's not even to like subdue the violent protests. It looks like the LAPD is doing a decent enough job at that. Gavin Newsom files an emergency injunction, issuance of a TRO ex parte, and people start praising the bravery of Gavin Newsom to say, oh my God, he's taking the National Guard, the state National Guard off state issues in the border and bringing them where they're not needed, except they have to put in a curfew 2 days later and the shit's burning down and it's going crazy. Okay, Gavin Newsom sues. The judge does not grant the ex parte TRO, temporary restraining order, grants them like a day or two to prepare their briefings and whatever. If I'm not mixing up the cases, this is Breyer's brother at the California stage. Am I wrong? I'm right about that, right?
Okay. The Northern District of California. And Justice Breyer's brother is still he's like 83 and he's still on the bench.
There's so many problems with it. It's gonna make people have certain thoughts which may or may not be warranted under the circumstances. Too old and too commie. Breyer grants Newsom's order for all of 12 hours. I mean, Newsom didn't even have time. His tweets aged so badly by the time he hit send, the order got overturned. But Breyer, in his infinite wisdom and infinite anti-Trump derangement syndrome, said, yeah, Trump has to relinquish authority over the National Guard to the state to Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom takes his victory lap, and then by the time he gets to the end and he's out of breath, it's already been overturned. Which court overturned it?
Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Okay. So it was because they only temporarily overturned it. They haven't issued a final decision.
Yeah. So bottom line, you get a radical judge, an activist judge who wants to usurp executive functions, gives the power back to the state. Now we've seen what at least LAPD is doing, but it's not on the merits. These are all on interim emergency orders, and so the Ninth Circuit overturns it. Says no, Trump gets to do it in the interim, and we're going to have expedited briefing on an interim injunction.
Yeah, I mean, on a preliminary injunction, because that's what the judge issued. He denied the TRO, then he granted the preliminary injunction, only gave him 12 hours to get it reversed. Unfortunately for Governor Newsom, the court reversed in less than 12 hours, though it did so on a temporary basis, pending further adjudication this week on the issue of Trump's use of the National Guard. So the Constitution of the United States authorizes the president to call into service the militias of the several states. Under certain conditions and circumstances as Congress authorizes and approves. So the Congress, in a law passed, the Insurrection Act, since 1807, it's 10 U.S.C. 12406, if you want to read it yourself, been on the books since 1807, and there have been use of the constitutional authority before that. George Washington used it to get together the militias to put down the Whiskey Tax Rebellion. Thomas Jefferson used it to enforce the Embargo Act. Even before this law was passed in 1807. But since its passage, you've had Eisenhower use it for civil rights, JFK use it for civil rights, LBJ use it for civil rights, LBJ use it related to riots, Nixon use it related to postal strikes, Bush use it, Poppy Bush use it related to riots. All of these people have used it in one way, shape, or form at some time or another. It has been commonly employed, and no court ever has said a president can't do so. Indeed, the prior Supreme Court precedent on this question has been this is a carte blanche issue for the president. He has full discretion. It is not our job to review his decision. So, and what is the authority? If the president determines there's an invasion, if the president determines there's an insurrection, or if the president merely determines, quote, that he's unable with regular forces to enforce federal law. That's it. And clearly, without doubt, that was present here. But that's in his discretion to make in the first place. The only thing the court hung its hat on is a clause that talks about the process for this happening. And the process says the order the president makes shall be, quote, issued through the governor. That's it. Not that the governor has any power whatsoever in determining whether or not the order be given. The Constitution gives the governor no such power. The statute and Congress gave the governor no such power. And I would note historically, the governor has not been even consulted before the National Guard has been invoked, like has happened. I mean, George Corley-Wallace literally stood in the schoolhouse door objecting to President Kennedy using the National Guard to enforce integration on a school campus. So quite clearly, he did not approve of the use of the National Guard. The idea that there's any kind of even procedural requirement beyond sending it through the governor, this appears to be a ministerial obligation. In other words, there's no discretion given to the governor. It's you receive it, you relay it. That's all. All it's doing is maintaining the chain of command for communication purposes. But it doesn't suddenly make the governor above the president of the United States. And yet that's what this lunatic judge did in California. Unfortunately for Newsom, the panel sitting on that handled the emergency appeals in the Ninth Circuit last week and this week include 2 Trump appointees. And that's why it was DOA at the Ninth Circuit, and it will stay DOA. And my guess is the Ninth Circuit will make clear that this is entirely the president's discretion, and that procedurally, all that's required is to order it through the governor. The governor has no power, no authority, no right, no privilege, no prerogative to object by any mechanism or any method or any means.
Okay, let me read as many super chat, CommuTube chats as I can. I can't share the screen because you'll see my DMs and Twitter, but Jameson Grader says, Viva, the horses are highly trained for this type of deployment. Those horses probably have $150,000 in training each. That's another reason why I wouldn't bring them there. But Maynard says, Barnes sounds like Candace now. LOL. There's no LOL. Barnes sounds like Candace now. We got Posmo.
No, I know. There is no similarity between me and kooky Queen Candace. And this is, I've encouraged people in this space frequently. It's like, even if they're deep skeptics of Israel, that if they come across as reflexively anti-Israel, nobody's going to listen to them within the American influential decision makers when Israel actually goes AWOL. It's just like Netanyahu made a mistake by crying wolf for 25 years over Iran. The Israel haters have made a mistake by crying wolf about Israel on everything. If you accuse them of genocide, you use that kind of language, you're going to just discredit yourself with anybody who has decision-making power in most of the Western world. You're always going to get my authentic opinion, but I am not anti-Israel. I will always choose Israel over Hamas, but that does not mean I want to get us in America involved in dumb, dangerous wars that would be counterproductive for global security, American prosperity, in the interest of the lives of ordinary American soldiers.
Posmo says, Barnes, Israel first policy will destroy America first. Barnes, Israel first policy will destroy America first if Israel seriously attacks Iranian oil production. Posmo says it's America's unconstitutional support for Israel that destabilizes the Middle East. If it was just halfway diminished, Israel probably would have come to an accord.
I'm not quite convinced of that.
No, and I don't think the neighbors want to kill them. I mean, there's no question about that.
And not only that, it's, there's just a long history of conflict with the Islamist world. I see some people saying that, they're not between Christians and Islam.
Well, they don't know the history of the Crusades. Growing up, I always thought
what led to the Crusades. Which was Islamist domination. I mean, so I'm no fan. Like, suppose, Barnes, you love the mullahs now. You're going to be hanging out in Tehran. So in between taking the secret Jew check and working for the Mossad, now I'm secretly working for the mullahs. No, I'm just for less war, more peace, America first. End of story.
Tarkina Meyer says, just need to help Alberta secede from Canada, join the U.S. Nesk Joe says, has Israel ever treated America as an ally the same way we treat them? How many?
At times they have. At times, absolutely. It's just Netanyahu's. I think he overstepped and overreached based on misreading the October 7th reaction. That he was very blunt after 9/11 about how this could afford opportunities to people, and he saw how it mostly worked. It worked until it didn't. Right? The Afghanistan thing looked good early on, and then we're stuck there 20 years against the friggin' Taliban. Mm-hmm. So that's why people are like, it'll be easier to topple the Iranian regime. The Persians. Okay, historically, the Persians are not easy to conquer. Period.
Never. What was it? Never get into a land. No, that was land or in Asia. Sorry, I was going to quote from Princess Bride. Chad Smith, MAGA wanting Trump to be Obama, Iran is hilarious. Trump's had a view for 10 plus years. Tucker and company are wrong. Strong U.S. Israel, strong Russia/Iran. On a new topic, Barnes, this is from Tarkina Meyer. Are you assisting with the Canadian Amish that have had hundreds of thousands in liens and fines? Rumble is helping them, or at least, dealing with their legal fees and representation, I think. And Libertarian Neighbor. Thanks, guys. 2 questions. Did SCOTUS not hear Ocean State Snopes 2A cases? AC, Robert, they've been done. And second question, Vance Massey, 2028.
Well, we got tons. We got SCOTUS.
Yeah, we got the SCOTUS.
The Karen Reed verdict. You pick. We can jump right into SCOTUS.
Well, let's do it now because the SCOTUS. Maybe we'll do the SCOTUS as
well. We have a dozen of them, but we can go boom, 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 boom. We'll do like 2 minutes each, rapid fire. Supreme Court.
You're doing
right
it, Robert.
Karen Reed, or we can wait on the Karen Reed verdict till the.
No, well, the Karen Reed, there is no verdict yet, right? They're in the second day of deliberation after this trial, which has been more revelatory than the first failed trial, hung jury. I haven't been watching it. I haven't been following it closely at all. I've been sort of following the Shara trial more closely than the Karen Reed, but my understanding is it's more of the same. Terrible prosecution, terrible evidence, corrupt. What state are we in right now? We're in Boston, Massachusetts cops. Do you have any takeaways and any predictions? Hung jury or outright acquittal or not guilty?
An honest verdict can only be not guilty across the board.
No.
Now, you can't guarantee an honest verdict. I don't know how the jury was selected in the case. The judge has tried to rig the trial in favor of the prosecution. But for those that haven't watched it, you can see various summations of it on Rekieta Law's channel on YouTube and Rumble and on Locals. He's covered in detail. He gave his own version of what he thought a closing argument should look like before a closing argument was given. So you can look at that. If you just want to see the summation of the case, the closing arguments are pretty good for that. I mean, the bottom line is there's no evidence of a collision. It never made sense to me. First case resulted in a mistrial. This case should result in acquittal. It's obvious the cops are covering up what really happened, and they decided they had a patsy because when she showed up at the scene, she was scared and horrified and traumatized and was like, did I do this? Did I cause this? And they're like, bingo, we're going to blame her for it. And they decided to finger her to cover up for cop complicity in killing another cop. That's what happened. The only question is, do we get an honest verdict or not? As the defense argument consistently made, there was no collision. There's no scientific evidence there was ever a car hitting the deceased. There's no medical evidence of the car hitting the deceased. There's no physical evidence of the car hitting the deceased. And the very limited evidence they tried to indirectly connect to it is evidence that didn't exist at the time of the scene, at the crime scene. It only magically reappeared in the possession of the rogue cop who's now been fired because of how rogue he was in this case. So hopefully an honest, honorable jury will acquit Karen Read because that's what the facts and the law demand.
And it was Joe Neerman who did the video on the green grass defense that he clearly now I forget the time frame. It clearly he which one was it now? Jeez,
if he had fallen when he fell, then
there'd be snow under him.
Correct. Well, no, I think it's that there wouldn't be snow under him, and there was. That's my recollection.
Okay, that's right. If he had fallen before it started falling, when they pulled him up, there would have been no snow under him. When they found him, there was snow under him, which means that that they put him after the snowfall and not before.
Yeah, that's my recollection.
Yeah,
but yeah, and he's done great coverage by Good Logic. We can briefly do a little P. Diddy update. It's very obvious that, to me, that the government, in their continuing cover-up case, which is what the P. Diddy case really is, covering up P. Diddy's connection to broad-scale corruption, much like the Epstein case and the Ghislaine Maxwell case, they are pretending that P. Diddy only trafficked women to himself, which is utterly ridiculous. It doesn't even fit the legal historical definition of sexual trafficking nor RICO predicates. But they want to put him away without disclosing to the world how he was entrapping and blackmailing all kinds of influential people. As part of their continuing cover-up, one of the people they discussed in trial this past week was famous rapper who, in honor of his girlfriend, had a freak off. The girlfriend had a birthday in January, and they were so terrified that the public would find out who it is, they wouldn't let people listening in the extra jury room even hear the voice of who the rapper was. A lot of people immediately started putting one and one together. There was a certain high-profile rapper whose wife has a birthday in early January and is connected to weird sexual activities and blackmail organizations like the Joe Francis Girls Gone Wild group, and that is Kim Kardashian, and that the husband was Kanye West. Well, guess who showed up in court like a day or two later to give symbolic support for P. Diddy? Kanye. So, where else could that rabbit trail go?
Well,
it'll continue to be a cover-up campaign in the P. Diddy case.
Kanye West, who literally just put out that song, Heil, and the lyric in that song, he says, "I'm a cuck. I like it when people F on my wife." Well, the lyrics in that song. Bunch of fucking degenerates.
So, I'm sorry. It looks, I can't confirm it, but it would make sense. And again, Mama Kardashian was neck deep with a lot of very sketchy people. And again, how did Kim Kardashian become world famous? Was it a porn video publicly released? So that's the kind of people. Jay-Z, those are the kind of people there. Beyonce, these are the kind of people Maureen Comey is protecting with a selective presentation of the evidence that hides the true nature of P. Diddy's blackmail extortion operation, which reached into probably the Obama world, who also P. Diddy was close with. So now, of course, if Pam Barbie was doing her job, maybe Maureen Comey wouldn't still be in control of this case. But when you have her father saying 86-47 to the world, and all Cash Patel and Dan Bongino do about it is complain on the internet, then you can see how this kind of corruption continues, even under the Trump Justice Department.
Let me bring up a bunch. We're going to do some of our Viva BarnesLaw.locals.com chats. Drunken Idaho says we have to protect those hardworking illegals in our farms. Recommend strictly enforcing minimum wage, overtime insurance, tax, PTO, and other laws for our farms to protect the illegals, of course.
And remember, everybody, because of how many inspectors are located at these places, Brooke Rollins knows all the illegals that are at these places. And she's been using her office to cover it up rather than expose it and prosecute it.
Let me see. We got more here. We got thank you from Susie C. We've got people don't ask enough questions about October 7. Israel could pull this off and the pagers, but it took 8 hours to respond. It took more than that, by the way, Sweaty Zeus.
Yeah, it took 12 hours. I mean, it's becoming increasingly difficult It's put it this way.
It's confirming conspiracy. It will in the minds of those who had certain concerns and conspiracy theories. This will only.
Well, they've been proven right. I mean, like one of the things I always tell them is look at short-term predictability, medium-term predictability. So you got people that like hate Trump, the Brian Berlechtic, New Atlas type people out there. And their view was that Trump's tariffs are just a policy to suppress China because Trump wants to wage war with the world. And thus, well, if he was right, then there would be no trade deal. And there was a trade deal because he doesn't know what the heck he's talking about. Whereas with the Duran, they're constantly ahead. But one way you can predict it, what is disturbing is the people who had a conspiracy interpretation, a critical, skeptical interpretation of October 7th. And you voiced concern right away. How the heck could this have happened? You're one of the very first people that did so. That what they predicted.
I got in trouble. People were judging me like, Viva.
How dare you second guess this tragic event? But all the critics said, if we are right, here's what's going to happen. The critics have been proven true so far, and that's disturbing.
In our locals community, Geegums. Problem is, there is NATO, which sucks us dry. Is that what it is? Which aligns with the unlikable neighbors. And now, unlike previous, there is BRICS. Whole different card game, chess game, whatever. Pick your medicine. We need to clean out our stall before we can fix anything else, my opinion. Sweaty Zeus, Burgum sold land to China, BFF. Dread Robert says, if Trump was truly taken in, then he needs to publicly fire people and strike back at Israel. If not, with a lot of people.
Well, there's smart ways. Putin's giving him the smart exit ramp. Just get Israel back to the negotiating table. Don't get directly involved in the conflict yourself. And Putin can help push across the line a peace deal that's enforceable through Russia because Russia has no interest in Iran ever developing nuclear weapons. So there's an easy exit path for him. Just like there was an easy exit path Putin's giving him on Ukraine. All he's got to do is take it. And it's in his best interest to take it or take some variation or version of it and not let these people entrap him in stupid, foolish wars while he's trying to get his domestic policy agenda through.
Tony7682 says Iron Dome is meant for short-range rockets, not ballistic missiles. Mr. Mike.
That's a fair point, yeah.
Some notable Bilderberg June 2025 attendees. Stacey Abrams, Alex Karp, James Baker, Albert Bourla, Bjorn, Christopher Donahue.
And they're closing it off. And they've added depopulation to the agenda, which is whose favorite item? Bill Gates. Hopefully we see more investigation. Trump has deliberately, directly ordered Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and Pam Bondi to investigate all issues concerning the funding of these riots. And now when you go the Minnesota component, and how is it magically USAID keeps popping up directly or indirectly?
It's amazing. And
another name, George Soros. His forensic fingerprints all over the place. If we get an honest inquiry, an honest investigation, we'll see those names start to percolate up in grand jury subpoenas in civil and criminal actions.
Oh, I see Peter Thiel at Bilderberg. Okay. Geegum says, I hope Trump just turns his focus up cleaning our own mess at home, or else after midterms, we haven't got a chance. Short time we stay focused. A.L. Herzog says, why did they enrich to 60%? I'm going to screenshot that and just look at that afterwards. What happened to the old CIA? No more inside man blowing things up. I have CIA create a series of minor accidents at the refining site, push a psyop, the local belief superstitions that make them want to give up on it. That's S. Ren. We got a beautiful picture there. Happy fall. That's freaking beautiful. Where is that?
That looks like Chattanooga. They say it's
in Oklahoma. Holy crap, that looks beautiful. The damage to Europe internally and towards Israel from refugees are a huge problem in the short and long term. If the U.S. government can't see that, they are blind to the last decade plus. Dread Robert. Merchant Marine. I don't know, Robert, who the fuck do you think Iran is referring to when they say Big Satan and experts say they have enough enriched uranium for 15 interballistic missiles? I sing Israel's praises for their contagious actions. I love Trump, but this supersedes Trump. Direct your ire towards Obama. Iran isn't innocent as you can, if you're Israeli, make a case that this is the logical next step in Israel's war against the axis of resistance that start. Who is this man? X-Red. That said, those rabbis in Bibi's coalition should be whispering in his ear, remember Saul, and as an American, I don't want us dragged into it. Uniparty globalists of the deep state working with Netanyahu to end MAGA, Dapper Dave. Is there animosity between Bibi and Trump? There is. Right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, remember, Bibi rushed in to endorse Joe Biden while Trump's election contest was still pending. Trump has not forgotten that. So it was Levin who convinced him this would be an easy path. Oh, Iran will fold fast. They'll capitulate. They'll run back to the table. They'll sign any deal you want because they can't handle it, and they're about to fall apart, and the regime is weak, and the economy is terrible, and they have no means to militarily respond, and blah, blah, blah. And he discovered within 48 hours Levin was lying to him.
Mm-hmm. Just because you guys rock, says Mandlici. Thanks for all you do. Viva and Barnes. Kimmy Hunt, I'm going to go refresh and see where we're at there. Everyone forgot there's a very economy stopping Russia from... Everyone forgot there is very little... Economically stopping Russia from assisting Iran because of those crippling sanctions.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Patricia, that is Patrick Carey, 82. Barnes, Viva, have either of you looked into the incident where people were saying, I got that. Okay. All right. Robert, do we?
Now we got SCOTUS. We can race through it. We got about 2 minutes each for 12 topics to make sure Viva can make his Father's Day dinner.
Now there might not. I'm going to get to all the tip questions. We might not have the locals after party tonight. Robert, you're going to be doing Bourbon with Barnes throughout the week.
Yeah, so tomorrow, Monday, special edition, what are the odds? What is the political ramifications of the Israel-Iran war and Trump stepping back on full immigration enforcement? We will be covering that in a special edition, what are the odds? Richard Barris, People's Pundit, daily on Rumble, YouTube, and Locals. And on top of that, and then Wednesday, we hopefully will have the Duran available in a special edition, as Alex Jones likes to say, emergency broadcast, for discussing the risk of World War III and how we might avoid it, various things to look for tactically from different perspectives. So hopefully we'll have that. We'll have Bourbons with Barnes all week long at Viva, BarnesLaw.locals.com.
And I will be live daily and maybe multiple times daily, depending on how this goes. And
now we're about to get through SCOTUS. We got a dozen cases to cover. Boom, 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 boom.
Okay. You're going to do most of the legwork here, and I'll ask some questions periodically. Go.
So my favorite little case is the SCOTUS blog that everybody follows. That's in the legal world. It is the SCOTUS blog. So it turns out the head blogger, part of this law firm in D.C. that uses that to get work in front of the Supreme Court. Well, it turns out he's this secretive poker player that everybody had always wondered about. That was always had a COVID mask and all kinds, so you couldn't tell. And it turns out he's a compulsive gambler and has spent the last decade making a lot of money, losing a lot of money, all around the world, trying to hide it. I could have told him not to use Montenegro banks. Wow, what a nitwit.
Was he net positive or net negative over the course of his career?
It's unclear. I'm reading between the lines that he was really net negative, but the official numbers they have is that at one point he was up $50 million. And he didn't report it. And he was hiding it into different accounts, disguising it as different things. But I think he was running through that cash, and other people said he had the habits of a compulsive gambler.
Legal question. Do I understand correctly? You get taxed on your gains, but you don't get to deduct your losses?
No, you can, but you have to just do it in a very particular way.
Okay.
So you can you're only responsible for your net income. But depending on how you do it, how you structure it, how your accounting works, etc., that's how you can run into some risk. Most of the world does not tax gambling winnings. Many of his gambling winnings were outside the United States. Mm-hmm. But he was in cahoots with some high-end gamblers who gave him key advice about how to handle some of these big whales that love to bet a lot but don't really have the money to back it up. But in between this, he was representing some that he was actually against on the poker table, but he's their lawyer in another context. So he owes them money. They owe him money. There's all these kind of shenanigans going on. He's trying to hide everything from the tax authorities. The idiot brought back $1 million in cash. He brought it back with him, and then he reported it and disclosed it. And so that was going to flag him with a bunch of investigations. Apparently, he wasn't bright enough to figure that out. You know, Mr. DC lawyer, expert, SCOTUS blogger. I know what Supreme Court's going to do. But my favorite part of the story is that he had so many mistresses, because the dude's married. He had so many mistresses, he tried to put them on the law firm payroll. So he got caught with that as well. They're trying to keep this mistress happy and that mistress happy and another mistress happy. It was like one of the Supreme Court's decisions this week where Gorsuch went into details of the history of this case. He's like, this lawyer was representing that person, then they're banging that person, then they're killing this person, then they're trying to kill another senator. He's trying to, the whole back of this. Whoa. So that was the most fun little side case of the week.
Keep your schmeckel in your pants, people, and do not cheat on your wife, because you could also wake up with worse than a lawsuit, a gun in your face, which is what most people deserve if they cheat on their spouse. Okay,
yeah.
Sorry.
So we got the Supreme Court. We've got habeas, real basic. The Supreme Court said you have no second chance to raise a habeas petition, even if you have new evidence outside of very limited circumstances, because Congress has greatly limited habeas corpus relief. And all I could think was, Congress has also greatly restricted habeas relief for illegal immigrants. But you guys are completely not enforcing those limitations.
So I understood that there was a habeas request at the state level, and then the gentleman presented a second habeas request at the federal level, alleging, I don't know if there was new evidence. Did they?
What happened was the initial habeas at the federal level, while that was on appeal, he gets his file. He discovers in his file evidence that the prosecutors hid and that his lawyer failed to inquire into. So he goes in and says, I want to supplement my habeas because I can show I'm innocent. And the court said, nah, too late. You had to put that in the first one. He's like, but I didn't have that evidence before the first one. Screw you. There's these tight, strict procedural rules, and if you don't follow that rules, you don't have any right to judicial access. Remember that when these same rogue judges say that illegals that have never followed any due process in America get special habeas rights that U.S. citizens don't get, even when they're innocent of the crime they're prosecuted with. The next up was the tax court, and there was a good dissent and then a bad decision by the author. Take a wild guess if you have a really dumb decision by the author and you have a good dissent, who's the dissenter and who's the author? All you have to know is one is really dumb and one is really smart.
Sotomayor, author, Thomas, or Gorsuch, dissent.
Gorsuch, the dissent, but Amy Coney Barrett was the author. Because when you get dumb, you got to get ACB level dumb. She decided. So here's how some people screwed the IRS screwed some taxpayers over. They kept charging them for something they didn't owe. So they go, and then they try to levy them on the money they don't owe. What happened is a wife's husband paid the wife's tax bill. The IRS refused to assign it to the wife because they could collect more interest by pretending the bill was for the husband, not for the wife. And so then they try to steal their property. So they go to the tax court, and finally they're about to win and prove that they never owed this money. And the IRS comes forward and says, you know what? We've collected everything that we could collect. So even if maybe we collected it illegally, we're not trying to continue to collect. So now there's magically no jurisdiction, tax court, and taxpayer gets screwed and can't get any relief. Goes up to the Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett eagerly walks and says, yes, there's no jurisdiction here whatsoever. IRS can screw over taxpayers with these kind of shenanigans anytime they want. And Gorsuch writes a right and righteous dissent that points out how practically absurd this is and how contrary to the plain language of the statute it is, which allows you to go to tax court anytime any determination by the IRS, including whether or not you owe taxes, is made, as happened here. It does not require an ongoing levy or lien action for you to have access to the tax court. But now it does. Another special exemption created because guess who has a secret file on every single federal judge in America?
Guess who has a secret file? The IRS?
Yep. They keep separate special files on every single federal judge.
So it was 8-1 in that case.
Yep. Gorsuch was the only decent human up there. God bless Thomas and Alito, but they tend to be wusses when it comes to the IRS.
I'm not going anywhere. It's been our 2 hours that I just got yeeted from Rumble. Okay.
All right. Let's hop on through. Up next, remember the wrong house raid?
Yep.
So as we predicted, Supreme Court did in fact reverse the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, said that there is no, this is under the FTCA, Federal Tort Claims Act. Congress has waived the immunity of the federal government if law enforcement commits certain listed itemized individual torts that they would be liable for if they were a state actor, a private actor in that state. So if you have an analogous state tort theory, then you can sue them. The 11th Circuit was saying, nope, can't do it, and said that in essence, instead, that law enforcement was completely exempt. Supreme Court reversed, said no, that's not the case. Said they might be exempt under the discretionary function exemption, but that has to be an individualized assessment. But that this broad belief that they're exempt is simply in the way they dodged handling the details of that issue and remanded to the 11th Circuit to do so. A separate little procedural decision they issued was on appeals. They said you have the right to file a notice of appeal, and once you file a notice of appeal, you don't have to file a second appeal, even if there was something imperfect about the way in which you filed your notice of appeal. Thank God they got that right, right? I mean, there's all these technical procedural shenanigans that courts use to screw ordinary everyday people, particularly when they're pro se litigants or things like that. And at least they came in and said this was insane, that, oh, well, you filed your notice of appeal, but you didn't file a second appeal within this time frame, and this little notice meant you had to file this within. It's all this shenanigans to help people, the government usually, big corporations, screw over ordinary people. They got that part corrected. Glad to see that rule was corrected. There's also parts of that decision for lawyers out there that will give you a roadmap for creative ways to challenge cases that won't necessarily that make it even harder for them to sabotage you, in terms of how Rule 59 is used, how Rule 60 is used, how Rule 61 is used, all that relevant. Then the other big decision that was issued this week was on, that we talked about, remember the schools and the ADA, about whether or not you had to prove a special version of a higher burden of bad faith when a school decides to screw over a disabled kid, and how they just made this standard up because it's not in the statute at all. Supreme Court came in, I think unanimously, said that's nonsense. That no, you don't have to prove a special bad faith standard. Schools are held to the same standard as everybody else. If they're discriminating on disability, they can be liable based on the same thing everybody else can be. So those are the cases that got decided. Then we got a string of cases that we're looking forward to them deciding this week.
And I'd never seen so many unanimous or near unanimous decisions, and I don't think unanimity is a good thing all the time, but you mentioned last week, I think, that they're getting the unanimous easy ones out of the way to drop the heavy hammers next week.
The ones that they're still fighting over.
Well, when it's mid-June now, when's their last day of the session before they recess for summer?
Usually the end of this month.
Okay, so they got to get all these out within the next 2 weeks, hell or high water. Okay,
yeah, exactly.
So
I would anticipate it could be all this week. The cases that are pending, the hot cases we're looking at, there's a big case about standing. Big case about schools giving textbooks to kids that are perverted, about parental rights versus school rights. Bureaucracy about the entire administrative state, a case that could greatly impact the administrative state's power to be rogue outside the control of the elected president. Whether or not Medicare gives you a right to sue when certain things happen that impact a bunch of spending clause right to sue cases. A big due process and terrorism case that's about suing the PLO, about whether the Fifth Amendment limits personal jurisdiction in federal courts. A major redistricting case about race-based redistricting. A big case about whether you can regulate the internet distributing porn to little kids. And then last but not least, the case everybody's really waiting on, the nationwide injunctions. Birthright citizenship. All of them may come down this week. I can give you a quick 60-second rundown on each one if you want.
We'll go for it. Nationwide injunctions. Well, whether or not federal courts can issue nationwide injunctions. Birthright citizenship is whether or not it's what's the term? Merely born on American soil, or whether or not
birthright citizenship. Yep.
Birthright citizenship. All right. So I guess go for the other ones real quickly.
All right. Yeah. So the standing case it's California that has all these crazy environmental rules. And I have a client who's also a locals board member who we're looking at different ways to get relief and remedy for individuals and small businesses from all of California's crazy rules. And this concerns the EPA carving out a special exemption. Because right now the EPA says we need to have, because environmental pollution crosses state borders, this needs to be a federal issue. But they carved out an exception for California. This is what led California banning all anything but electric vehicles in about 15 years, or a decade or so. This is what Trump has tried to reverse by executive order just this past week. California is still trying to enforce it. The Supreme Court is deciding whether or not you can challenge this. The people who sued were automakers and fuel producers. And what it was, they're like, look, if we can't produce, our market's going to go way down if this rule mandating all electric vehicles is pushed through. So we believe this violates the intent of the EPA and that the administrative action taken exceeds its statutory authority and raises a separate independent constitutional question. So how do you think the courts avoided these issues, the lefty courts in the District of Corruption, where you have to file all these claims? No standing. They're like, hold on a second. We're the ones getting screwed. How do we have no standing? So this goes up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court's this will have a big impact, not just on the crazy EPA rules, and I'll be monitoring it for new creative ways that we can bring legal claims for my locals board client on this. It's part of the 1776 Law Center supported project, but it's also about in general. When can you take remedial action when the government goes rogue? So I've always been a longtime critic of the standing doctrine. Some degree of protection against the broad expansion of this doctrine to gut the ability to get relief and remedy from rogue government and rogue governmental actions. This case will be very impactful for that. Now, we've talked about one of the other cases already, just to remind people. The school, you can go back and watch our episode on it. This is about your right to opt out in Maryland of your little kid being given perverted books by the local school. And remember, in Maryland, they weren't allowing you to. And dear Justice Jackson was like, well, why don't you just change school districts? As if that was the easy solution or resolution. So this is also about parental rights versus school power. This is critical to a whole wide range of topics. So that case, a lot of people are watching. The Obama task force case that we've talked about twice. We've probably reviewed it more than Pam Bondi had, because she apparently is unaware that it's up before the Supreme Court of the United States. Maybe somebody should send like a special secret Supreme Court notice to Pam Bondi so she can know what cases she's actually defending before the Supreme Court of the United States, asserting the Biden administration position on this. This goes not just to the Obama task force. This is the power of the unelected administrative state to usurp elected branches of power, because the Obama task force was given the power to determine all conditions and terms of every insurance plan in the country, even though they're all not appointed by the president, even though they're all not appointed by the consent of the Senate, even though they're all unelected, and usually conflicted, like the people that Robert Kennedy kicked out of the vaccine committee this past week. So this is a big, big case that impacts the administrative state writ large. Medicare case. This is a case about where they're suing. Now, it's Planned Parenthood directly related. So there's that political aspect. But it's under the spending clause, they often have all these provisions that say the government shall do this, the government shall do that, a plan shall do this, so on and so forth, the Medicare plan context. Who can enforce that? The question is, can an ordinary individual enforce that? If they have a right to choice of providers or right to access of providers, can the provider sue? Can the patient sue? Can anybody sue? Is there a right to sue, period? Or is it only enforceable by the federal government? That, which has big implications outside of the healthcare context, also to be decided likely this week. PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, predecessor of Fatah, has been sued because of their sponsor of terrorism, including paying terrorists after the fact. They give their family money. Mm-hmm. So they've been sued under laws passed during the first Trump administration, specifically to allow people to sue for this. So how are federal courts allowing the terrorists to escape responsibility? They're suddenly saying that the Fifth Amendment's due process clause is the same as the 14th Amendment due process clause, and that restrains the ability of state courts to have personal jurisdiction over parties. They're saying the Fifth Amendment due process clause imposes the same due process restraint on the federal government extraterritorially around the world. And so they said you can't sue the PLO because the law that conferred personal jurisdiction did not confer a benefit on the PLO. And that is contrary to a long litany of law under the Supreme Court. So that case could also have broad impact for extraterritorial power of federal courts writ large. Then there's a big redistricting case of Louisiana racial gerrymandering backup. This is how for 30 years, there's been a quid pro quo deal to help increase the amount of minority leftist representation at the expense of moderate, old school, more populist that had to build coalitions in places like the South and elsewhere. And this is that telling Louisiana, no, you have to have 2 black districts. No, you have to have 3 black, it goes back and forth. And that's before the Supreme Court. Big impact. Will the Supreme Court finally get out of the redistricting business? And last but not least, there's the speech case on the Texas law that required the Pornhub and the like to have age verification mechanisms before they allow access so that children aren't accessing porn. They sued Pornhub and others, claiming that violates their free speech rights. It has long been established that you can restrict obscenity, number one. Number two, you can definitely restrict obscenity specific to age. There might be things that are not considered obscenity for adults that is considered obscenity for a child. And the question is, will the Supreme Court recognize and respect that ability of the state to limit access to obscenity, or will they continue to bow to big tech and allow unfettered access to it? So those are the big Supreme Court cases we have up and coming. The only other case I have left to talk about is our bonus case, United States versus the Amistad, which dates to the Supreme Court in the 1840s.
Let me do one thing first. I want to read the tipped questions in our locals community because we're going to get to all of those. And there was a funny one up here. Here's an image of John Lennon singing a copy of Double Fantasy album for Dave Chapman several hours before being assassinated in 1980. Okay, hold on, let me get that out of here. Then we got
Catcher in the Rye, right?
Yeah, well, I remember writing that on my book when I didn't even read the book Catcher in the Rye, but I had a book, and then I wrote the guy he killed the Beatles when I was a 16-year-old. Tisk tisk, a God-fearing Amish man would never work with the English federal government. That's Weird Al Yankovic doing Amish Paradise. We got NetJess, a worthy cause, and it's a GoFundMe for Laura, Vera, and Isaac. Check that out. We got Ithaca 37 Cato. What are Vance and Kennedy doing to fight the agro industry and folks like Brooke Rollins?
They're doing all they can, but Susie Wiles is steering things in a different direction, and Brooke Rollins has got away with it so far. And that's why she needs to be called out aggressively and consistently.
Caleb Cass says, supposedly Sarah Huckabee Sanders went to the White House on behalf of Tyson Foods, Rice, and Pilgrim's Pride. She has connections to them through Mike Rogers, Tyson executive, yada, yada, yada. She visited Trump and Rollins at the White House on 6/10. Check the dates.
That's correct. Rollins helped bring her in to do the same corporate lobbying. If Sarah Huckabee Sanders wants a future, she needs to stand up to Tyson Foods. Until she does, I'm not going to believe that she's an honest populist reformer, but is rather just another normie politician who's beholden to the big corporations in her state.
Slim Shagan says, from Really Red Ginger, hey, Barnes, have you ever done a hush-hush on Hurricane Carter murders in Patterson?
That's a good idea. No, I haven't yet, but it's on my list now.
Can we rethink giving LA and parts of California to Mexico? Just saying if they want to go. That's from Hope for Better.
No, I was joking with Richard Paris. We should just go take the whole West Coast up to until you get to the interior and just carve it off like Goldwater talked about with the East Coast, and just give it to China or give it to somebody else.
It's rich in resources. He couldn't do that.
I know.
I'm joking.
Yeah, no, that's not realistic. That's just comedic.
Could President Trump give the leadership of the USDA to RFK Jr.?
Potentially, that's an option, yeah. I mean, he's got a lot on his plate, so that would be undesirable to have that much on his plate, but that is an option if Brooke Rollins doesn't start to fix things quickly. I think he probably just needs to look at other people to potentially replace him, but Kennedy would be the right advisor to listen to as to who should be in that position.
I like your Thomas Massey suggestion. That's actually
but Massey would be great. I was whatever people think about Massey, about disagreements about budget politics and things like that, Massey has been the best advocate for small farmers in this country for more than a decade. I've seen it firsthand, repeatedly. So I would vouch for him every day of the week and twice on Sunday in that position of influence.
And that was from Fenja 1987. Buffalo Betsy says, because he worked in the food industry, so that's all I can figure. Or the person above him need those contracts. The timing for her relative to her death is too suspicious to be ignored. Let me see. Buffalo Betsy, I'm so glad you mentioned the roommate. How many grown married men with children have male roommates? Not that I'm many that I've met. The theory is that he might have had a secondary residence for whatever the reasons for work. And so instead of driving home, if it was too far, he'd have to split a house with 3 people. That's the theory.
What kind of normie has that? I mean, everything about that screams, this is not normal.
Yep. Viva, when are you going to secure that promised interview with Nicole Shanahan? Let me screen grab that. Her perspective on Brooke Rollins would be welcome.
She's a critic as well as I am.
Amos Smith. Okay, so we got all that. So, Robert, what is the historic decision? Amistad is going way back to the origins of America.
Yeah, a good little movie Steven Spielberg made after Schindler's List was Amistad. I had family that was connected to the case in Rhode Island. So this is something we're adding to the Sunday show. We'll try to cover a consequential historic case each week. Planned to cover it last week. Totally forgot about it when we got to the end. So what was great about the Amistad case is born free, always free. It rejected the fundamental premise of slavery around the world. Now, they didn't consistently apply it like they could have and should have, like Lysander Spooner and Frederick Douglass argued in the unconstitutionality of slavery.
But hold on, was it if you're born free, then you're always free, but slaves were not born free? Was that the rationale?
They never quite got around to figuring that out. In other words, the definition of slavery in America was both self-referential and circular.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, who is a slave? Well, if your mom was a slave. And it's like, hold on a second, you haven't really answered the question who a slave is. And that's how and then they rigged the court system to say that if they predetermined you were a slave, that you had no standing to sue. And they were inventing those nonsense doctrines all the way back then. Because if you read The Unconstitutionality of Slavery by Lysander Spooner, co-authored by Frederick Douglass, one of the great libertarian-type legal thinkers who really started out populist and became an anarchist because he lost confidence in America's legal system over about 3 decades of being a strong, ordinary, normie activist. But he was right. You go back to, at the time of our founders, they thought slavery would be gone in 10 years. And leave it to a Yale man, Eli Whitney, to screw all that up with a cotton gin. But basically, the right interpretation of how slavery should have been interpreted is United States versus Amistad, which said that because they were born free, always free, and thus could not be treated as slaves, and it undermines the entire legal predicate of slavery in the United States, but up to 1860 until the Civil War. And so I recommend The Unconstitutionality of Slavery as well, a great text, great book. But that would have become evidence. It was on the exhibit list, both the United States versus Amistad and the Lysander Spooner's Unconstitutionality of Slavery was on the exhibit list and won United States of America versus Wesley Trent Snipes. But it never came to fruition as there were other mechanisms of getting a lot of that evidence in. But so, great historic case, consequential case. Film is pretty solid. Anthony Hopkins is John Adams and others, who also said famously, for those people saying, hey, we should go to war with the mullahs, etc., the same John Adams family that would go on, John Quincy Adams, say that born free, always free before the Supreme Court, absolutely right decision in the great human rights natural law tradition of America, also said, America does not go abroad searching for monsters to destroy. So if you believe in our founders, you are against more war, and you don't use, oh, but look, Barnes, those are really scary monsters over there. We do not go abroad searching for monsters to destroy.
We got Red Team 33. C-SPAN needs to go through age verification. The acts of Congress are extremely obscene. And why was Peter Thiel at Bilderberg? That's I'm going to go see if
That's a fair criticism. Absolutely.
No, but I want to go see it because
Thiel has always interacted with those circles and places.
Well,
I mean, and some of the Palantir people are saying some sketchy things. So the certain assurances that have been made about Palantir, one could reasonably question given their hanging out at Bilderberg. But the depopulation agenda is the agenda that they weren't wanting to talk about, but they discovered is what they're really talking about at Bilderberg. And just, that's Bill Gates. He loves vaccines. Why? Because it's somehow going to reduce the population. Ask yourself how that might be coming about.
Claire Cat 367 says, Viva Barnes, speaking of undismissed cases, are you familiar with Dr. Kirk Moore in Utah, who is still being prosecuted up to 35 years?
I offered to represent him. He went a different path, so I wish him the best of luck.
Sidloy asks, whatever happened to the Trump's cases in New York State? Yeah, whatever happened?
The Second Circuit Court of Appeals said everything was fine, despite a dissenting judge in that bogus civil nonsense case. So now his only hope there is the Supreme Court. The New York appellate courts can't seem to get around to issuing a decision.
Does the Supreme Court dissent hold any legal weight? Why document a dissenting opinion? Because it could become the majority later on. For
future purposes. Is it binding? No. It's a credible legal argument that can be used that later on often ends up becoming the law.
I bought myself a Father's Day present today.
What'd you get?
I got a box of UFC fighting cards that I'm going to look at. But I'm going to open. I think I might start doing unboxing. But and accepting gifts of cards. I had the best idea. Like it's like a tip question, but I will do like a thing from whoever contributes the box of cards, and then we can give. I'm thinking of also like I can give out hand signed cards later on. My daughter got me this, which is fantastic at the antique shop, which is a Happy Gilmore. It's all printed up. It's not original, so it's legit. Robert, everybody Happy Father's Day. And I was going to make a joke, but I won't make a joke. No need to politicize everything. Happy Father's Day, everybody. You have your schedule. You're going to be Bourbon with Barnes. You're going to be on with Richard Barris tomorrow. We might have an emergency broadcast with the Duran on Wednesday. I will be live daily at 3 o'clock on Rumble. I'm going to be on with Grobert on Wednesday, and I'm going to have some good guests, so stay tuned for that. And everybody.
Yeah. Grobert's going to get into Viva's secret history during his serial killer stage in Canada.
Oh no, I'll see where Grobert goes. I'm prepared to answer every question on earth, and so we'll see what Grobert asks. I have to go watch Hundley. I got some stuff out of Hundley once upon. Hundley's got an interesting life as well. So
yeah, it really does. It's a fascinating personal life story. He just doesn't share it very often.
Everybody out there, go and enjoy the rest. Oh, we got a raid. Let me see who we can raid. Sorry, I almost forgot to do that.
Is Salty Cracker up and going?
Apparently, he can't receive raids.
Does he block raids?
It's a cool frog. I thought you were ending it, so I just sent it over.
Okay, cool.
Sweet.
I was going to say we could have raided Myron Gaines and see how our audience reacts to Myron. Hold on. What is Myron Gaines talking about tonight? Israel tries to drag America to war, mass protests in the U.S., and more. Go to the Frog. There's a button. Look, you want to go watch someone else on Rumble right now. Everybody, enjoy Father's Day. Godspeed. God bless. We will see you all tomorrow. Peace out.